Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Stillman and Company is presented by Southern Bank of Tennessee, your bank for small business. No Jared today. He is getting a head start on the weekend. Jake Lyman with you live from the pub in the Gulch. Teron Davenport is going to join us shortly. Why wait for St. Patrick's Day? The party starts early at the pub Nashville. Enjoy proper shenanigans all weekend long with Irish fare, drink specials, and live entertainment, including Irish step dancers, bagpipes, and more. Don't miss the fun. St. Patrick's Day is coming up on Monday, and the pub Nashville is the place to be. Kick things off with a special St. Patrick's brunch at 9 a.m., followed by live entertainment all day and the best Irish drinks and bites in town. Again, Jared out today. Jake Lyman, we'll have Teron Davenport here shortly, covering the SEC tournament just a stone's throw away at Bridgestone Arena. Game one of quarterfinal Friday is underway. Right now, Auburn is up 9 on Ole Miss with just 3 minutes left. Ian Safar is here as well. Ian, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Jake?
Doing great. It is. It's a cool environment down here.
Looks
in
lively.
The Gulch.
Yeah.
It is lively for sure. I mean, I guess it's to be expected. It's probably the first big tourist weekend.
It's beautiful
of the
too.
calendar, right? And it's great weather. SEC tournament in town, St. Patrick's Day coming up on Monday. So it is packed down here, which is why Teron Davenport is not with us yet as he searches for parking down here in the Gulch. Something
like
I'm
half
sure
the
many
rest of the city. Yeah.
Right. Many of our listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with that experience. We got a fun show for you planned today. Coming up at 2:45, Chris Sanders is going to join us. Was unable to come on Wednesday because Vanderbilt basketball was on the air. So Chris is going to join us for a little run TMC at 2:45. Cory Curtis at 3:15. We're going to talk a lot of Titans with Teron Davenport. It has been a big week for the two-tone blue. Lots of free agent signings. And it seems like the Titans are zeroing in on what they want to do at the number 1 overall pick, and it's Cam Ward. So we'll talk a lot about that coming up. But again, quarterfinal Friday in the SEC tournament. Auburn up 8 right now on Ole Miss. So it looks like the top seed in the tournament is going to survive their first game and move on to the semifinals tomorrow. Big one coming up next, Tennessee and Texas. Texas has won their first 2 games of the week, beating Vanderbilt, beat Texas A&M in double overtime yesterday, and they will try and knock off Tennessee, who I'm sure will have a lot of fans in attendance over at Bridgestone Arena. We'll keep you updated on the SEC tournament all day long, but let's get to the Titans here. It's been a big week for the two-tone blue, adding a lot of players out there. Dan Moore obviously was the big splash, adding the left tackle back on Monday to a 4-year, $82 million deal. Filled out the offensive line with Kevin Zeitler later on in the week. Also added some key pieces on the defensive side of the ball, including Xavier Woods. Van Jefferson added at wide receiver. Titans doing a lot of one-year short deals, just trying to shore up this roster, which it has a lot of holes. And I was talking with Adam earlier this week that you want to make sure that you don't have any glaring holes that need to be addressed heading into the draft, with the exception of quarterback, I guess, which I would say quarterback right now is a glaring hole with only Brandon Allen and Will Levis on the roster. But if you already know what you're doing with the number 1 overall pick, it doesn't really seem to matter what else you do at quarterback. But outside of that, yeah, you probably need another edge rusher. Yeah, you probably need another wide receiver. I think it's a pretty deep class at both those spots. So you feel good about getting one of those players on day 2 or day 3 that can contribute right away. But outside of that, your offensive line, it looks solid. I would say this is the best that I've felt about the Titans offensive line since 2021, when you had that group of Lawan and Saffold on the left. Ben Jones obviously was a stalwart at center. You had Nate Davis at right guard, and then it was kind of a rotating door at right tackle, but it was better options than what they've had the past couple of years. But it was a good offensive line back then. I feel good about this one. Is Dan Moore worth 4 years and $82 million? No. But is he a starting level serviceable left tackle? Seems like it. He started 66 games in the NFL. And now you get to move J.C. Latham back over to his primary spot at right tackle. I really like what the Titans have done on the offensive line, and adding a veteran like Zeitler at right guard makes you feel good, especially if Lloyd Cushenberry is back.
That's my only concern. I worry about the recovery for Cushenberry.
Right. That's the big question mark. I know that he said,
because it happened in the season, right?
Yeah, so, it happened, November? Does that sound right? Like
about halfway through. Yeah.
Early to mid-November is when he tore his Achilles. And I know it's getting it's getting faster when it comes to the recovery time for that, right? Like, it used to be, hey, if you tear your Achilles, you're probably not only done for whatever year you're playing right now, but you might miss the entire year next year or most of it. Now we're seeing some of these guys like when I know it was probably just Aaron Rodgers drumming it up for the popularity and, the drama of it all, but he said he might come back for the playoffs when he tore it in September. So I think Cushenberry said back in January when they did the locker room cleanout day that he was 2 months into an 8-month recovery plan, which would put him on track to possibly be ready to go for training camp. So that would make you feel good if that actually is the timeline of 8 months since the injury. So if it happened in November, if he's able to get back on the field in some capacity in July, you'd feel good about him being back for week 1. But that's always an if, because it is an Achilles injury and you don't want to rush him back and then lose him even longer if there's a re-injury or something like that.
And
but
hopefully he could pick up pretty quickly.
That's
Even if
true.
he started a little bit slow, maybe the first month, takes him a little bit to get back into form.
Right. We saw that. I know that Lewan was an ACL injury, but we saw when Taylor Lewan came back, his first year back from that ACL wasn't, or at least the first half of that year wasn't great. But then towards the end of the season, when the Titans were making that push for the 1 seed, he looked back to his old self. And then, of course, a couple months later, he re-injured the knee. But I think you will have maybe some growing pains with Lloyd Cushenberry as he works his way back in. But I feel great about that interior offensive line, which I know Jared and others talk about how you can draft a guard in the 4th round and they can contribute immediately. But having Zeitler next to J.C. Latham, I think that's a great setup there. And hopefully Peter Skoronski continues to take another step forward. So I feel great about the offensive line. I think wide receiver, edge, you probably need another linebacker.
Definitely need edge, big time.
Right. Edge is the one where
I think that's probably number 1, right? Other than QB.
Yeah, I guess depending on what the coaching staff thinks of Arden Key. I know the fan base doesn't think a whole lot of Arden Key, but the fact that he wasn't released makes me think that they at least expect some sort of contribution from him. But yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
Edge is, but that is the position group that Mike Borgonzi made a point to say was probably the deepest in this class. So who knows, maybe if you trade back from 35, you could take one in the 3rd round, or you have a pick right at the top of the 4th round. Maybe that's where you go for an edge rusher if you take a wide receiver at 35. But I think those are the 2 spots you really need a starting caliber player in there still. But outside of that, yeah, you need some depth at safety. It seems like after the trade of Kenneth Murray, Ian, that the Titans like the young group of linebackers that they have next to Cody Barton.
We'll try this new guy, right? Cody Barton.
Barton seems like he's the green dot. He's going to be out there all 3 downs, but then maybe you kind of rotate Cedric Gray, Otis Reese, James Williams, that kind of youth movement at the other linebacker spot, which I don't hate because you don't really need to use a whole lot of premium draft capital or money at the inside linebacker spot. Like, yeah, it's great to have a good inside linebacker, but I don't think you need to have an elite inside linebacker to make your defense great.
Yeah, especially if you have Barton there, right? So you got one you're planning on at least him playing a lot. So you already kind of have that one spot kind of figured out. So hopefully through the rotation of the others, and maybe Cedric Gray can actually pop a little bit.
We didn't see a ton of him last year because of the injury. So Gray was a guy I think a lot of Titans fans were thrilled to get in the 4th round. And when he got injured and didn't play until November, December, I think people kind of forgot about him. We'll see if he is a guy that can step up and be a guy who plays 60, 70% of snaps this year.
And who's the kid that keeps getting hurt? Is it Chance Campbell?
Chance Campbell, yes.
Yeah, he's probably – I guess he's probably – is he technically under roster under contract? I don't know.
I think he is, but Chance Campbell, he is the preseason star every single year. It's like that dude makes plays all over the field in training camp, and in the preseason, it always seems to get hurt, which is tough for him. But maybe that's that group of 4 to 5 young inside linebackers, and maybe you do spend a 5th or 6th round pick on another one and just hope that one of those guys can step up and be the running mate with Barton. But I feel good about the defense, I think outside of edge and linebacker, maybe you could use another safety. Xavier Woods and Amani Hooker, those are your starters.
I think they brought back Mike Brown.
Right, you have Mike Brown, and you have some of those younger flyer guys on the roster that you take with late-round picks and undrafted free agents, which I think is fine there. Offensively, I've given up on the Titans possibly using any resources on tight end. I think tight end is what it is at this point. Outside of the top couple guys like Warren and blanking on Colson Loveland from Michigan, I think those are the two guys in the draft who could come in and really be an immediate impact player at tight end, and you're not taking either of those guys. So I think tight end kind of is what it is. You hope that you get more out of Wiley and Okonkwo, but I'm not really holding my breath there. Wide receivers where they need to address offense at the very least, and that could come in the form of a veteran. There's still a few out there: Diggs, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp. It doesn't seem like Cooper Kupp's going to. It looked like Dallas was maybe.
Yeah, that was the late rumor. Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe someone on the West Coast.
The decision
Dallas
was supposed to be today, so still haven't heard anything yet.
Maybe we'll get something coming down here, but we'll see with what the Titans do at wide receiver. We'll talk with TD about this later on in the show, but I would love to get one of those wide receivers at the top of the second round.
Have you seen the score of this basketball game, though?
Oh, I've not.
No. Ole Miss has now cut it to 5 with a minute and 13 left.
60-55. What a crazy SEC tournament we're having right now. And I know that that's kind of what we expected with how good this conference has been this year. But, I mean, yesterday – the late game started over an hour after it was supposed to because of all the overtime we were getting.
I missed it. I was out.
I did not watch the late game last night. That was too late for me. But to get the double overtime in Texas and Texas A&M, Sean Padula had the game winner in the early game for Ole Miss over Arkansas. I mean, what a couple of days we've had in the SEC
Ole
tournament.
Miss with the ball down by 5, 39 seconds and counting. And a foul on Auburn.
Yeah, looks like they're going to the free throw line. 38 seconds left. We'll take a quick break here. We'll give you an update on this when we come back and see if Auburn can hold off this late run from Ole Miss, as it looks like they might cut it to 3 here with 38 seconds left. So a great start to quarterfinal Friday. And again, Tennessee and Texas coming up right after this game. That one should be fun. Tennessee trying to see if they can grab that final number 1 seed on Selection Sunday, while Texas still on the bubble. A win today likely would push them firmly into the field of 68. So lots going on at the SEC tournament. We are live out in the Gulch at the pub. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today, going to be joined shortly by Teron Davenport for the rest of the show. We are live at the pub in the Gulch covering the SEC tournament. Again, tune into 102.5 and 106.3, The Game, for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament today, presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, thenewcumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. Ian Safar is back at the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We do have a final over at Bridgestone Arena. Top-seeded Auburn holds off Ole Miss 62-57. We saw the top seed in the ACC tournament yesterday. Duke get a scare in their first game. Cooper Flagg also getting hurt in that game. It was the fellow contender for the National Player of the Year, along with Flagg, Janai Broom, who hit the bucket that closed it out for the Tigers, 62-57. Auburn moving on to the SEC semifinals. They will take on the winner of Tennessee and Texas in the battle to see who is the real UT, coming up in just a couple of minutes. Talking Titans here. Again, TD is coming. He is on his way over here, and we will talk all things Titans with Teron Davenport throughout the show. Again, Chris Sanders is going to join us at 2:45, Cory Curtis at 3:15. Just talking about some of the moves the Titans made over the past week. It's been a flurry of moves, although not a lot of huge moves, a lot of depth moves outside of Dan Moore at left tackle. But it seems like the main takeaway that everybody has taken from this, that the Titans are taking Cam Ward first overall in the draft. And I know Jared has already guaranteed that Cam Ward is going to go number one, even though he doesn't like it, he said, but he is guaranteed. Ian, what are your thoughts? Do you think the Titans should take Cam Ward? I know Jared says he doesn't, but he's kind of at this point, he's kind of just resolved himself that it's going to happen. Do you think Cam Ward should be the number one pick in the draft?
That's a good question. I just usually, like last year when it's the consensus number one, it's just kind of a given. I don't feel like Cam Ward is in that same kind of category.
Yeah.
So it makes me a little bit hesitant to just go ahead and lock him in as number one, even though everyone keeps saying if this was another year, this probably wouldn't be the case, So I'm like, okay, just because you have the first pick doesn't necessarily mean you should take a guy at a quarterback, even though it's a huge position of need, just because, even if he's, if he's regarded as not number one pick worthy. So that makes me a little hesitant.
Right. And I get that, because you are right that when the Titans got the number one overall pick, it's not like the last couple of years where you could have sent the ticket in.
Yeah, slam dunk. They already knew, right?
The second the clock hit 0 and the Patriots beat the Bills in that final game, and the Titans lost in their finale against the Jaguars. Like, if it was last year, the Titans could have just told the commissioner, like, hey, you're going to read Caleb Williams' name in 3 months and get it out of the way.
And everyone just assumed Chicago was going to do the same thing anyways. Yeah.
Right. So it isn't like that. But I was the same way when the Titans got the pick. I think Cam Ward was my least favorite option when they first got the pick. And that was just based off what I've heard, watching him casually. I didn't really know a ton. But I need people who are saying that they want the Titans to trade this pick to just go watch some Cam Ward.
I need to watch more, I think.
What I have been trying to tell people, go watch, and I know he got a lot of flack for sitting out the second half of the Pop-Tart Bowl. Go watch the first half of that game, because it is a laser show. He is making every single throw you could possibly want from a quarterback in 30 minutes of football. It is fun to watch. And I remember, and I'll talk to TD about this when he gets here, that I watched the only full game of Cam Ward that I watched before the season ended was when he played Virginia Tech. The game where the Hokies had their Hail Mary pulled off the board at the very end of the game and kept Miami undefeated. And I remember coming in.
I'm sure.
I'm not at all. No. ACC refs got that one right. I remember coming in and talking to TD the next day, and I said, I hadn't watched Cam Ward, but I see it. I get why people are talking about him as a top 5 pick. I think that Cam Ward is worthy of the number 1 pick.
Okay, good.
And it's been slow. I think when the Titans first got the pick, I wanted them to trade it, but I am in on Cam Ward. And I think the main reason is this. People keep talking about how Borgonzi and Callahan and Brinker, they're all tying their career to Cam Ward if they take him number 1. You're tying your career to Cam Ward either way because another team's going to take him, right? If you trade away the pick and the Giants come up and get Cam Ward and he ends up being a superstar, Amy's going to fire everybody anyway. So either way, you're tying yourself to Cam Ward. And at that point, the question is, do you believe in him or not? And it seems like they do. You sign Brandon Allen, and that's your quarterback room with Will Levis. Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 pick.
I do like that he's seemed to improve at every level.
Right.
You know,
and he's made every team he's played for better.
From transfers, right.
Incarnate Word and then Washington State and Miami. I like Cam Ward. And I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. And I'm not one of those people who's saying, well, Patrick Mahomes was slept on and he went 10th overall. That's not what I'm saying. But you can see it. And I know a lot of people tried to make the comparison to Will Levis. Like they were saying, well, if you want Will Levis 2.0, take Cam Ward because he makes a lot of stupid decisions. He makes stupid decisions in a very different way than Will Levis. Like Will Levis is so high-strung and tight all the time, and it's just like he's overthinking everything, and that leads to him making mistakes. Cam Ward is the opposite. That dude will just stop his feet in the pocket because he's so relaxed back there. I'm not saying he's going to be able to do that in the NFL, but it's a different kind of bad decision that he's making. And I think you can coach that out of Cam Ward a little bit better because I think it's just his confidence that's making him make a couple of, like, hey, I can make that throw in that window. And sometimes you can't. With Will Levis, I think he's just all over the place. And it's just such instinctual that he's like, all right, I have to make a play. I have to make a play. Cam Ward's like, I can make a play. And I think you can rein that in a little bit better if you're Brian Callahan. I like Cam Ward. I really do. And I want to get TD's thoughts because I know TD was more on Shedeur Sanders over the past couple of months.
Yeah, and that's the fit maybe for the Titans. Yeah.
I do like Shedeur Sanders. I just think when you watch him on film, it doesn't stand out. Like the ball doesn't jump off his hand. He makes good decisions for the most part. His ball placement is good, but it just doesn't it doesn't look like a number 1 overall pick to me. With Cam Ward, you can watch, and I forget who tweeted it out. TD did retweet it if you want to go back through his tweets. There was a tweet. It was about 10 minutes and it just said, like, Cam Ward throwing dots for 10 minutes straight. You watch that, and I think your mind will be changed on Cam Ward. And I know you can put Will Levis highlight throws together too. Like, I understand that. But some of the ball placement and the anticipation that he throws with, I think Cam Ward is going to be a good quarterback in this league. Will he be a superstar who can help the Titans compete with the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals and the Ravens? I don't know that yet. We're going to have to see. But I think he's worthy of the number 1 pick, especially when I know everybody's looking ahead. The next quarterback class is always better. It always is because you haven't seen it yet. It's like, all right, well, let's wait for Arch Manning. Well, Arch Manning has made like 4 starts in his career. I don't know if you can pencil Arch Manning in as the number 1 overall pick for next year and say that he's immediately going to be worthy. And who are your other quarterback options? Drew Aller, he could have come out this year. Garrett Nussmeier, he could have come out this year. I feel good about taking Cam Ward because who knows where you're going to be next year. You could, let's say they did sign Daniel Jones or somebody like that to just be a bridge quarterback. I think it's a fair guess that the Titans probably wouldn't end up with the number 1 overall pick. It's hard to get the number 1 overall pick. And I don't know if you'd be able to go get yourself a quarterback, even if there was one worthy. So you got the number 1 pick. I think Cam Ward is worthy of it. The other teams seem to think Cam Ward is worthy of it because they're scrambling now and maybe signing Russell Wilson because they're not going to get Cam Ward. So I feel good about Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick.
Would you still be willing to trade out if the offer was good enough?
I think there's always an offer, right? Like, I think there's always a number that could get me off that pick. Like, if somebody was ridiculous.
What if it was Joe Burrow? Is there a number that would get you off the pick for that?
It's a really good question.
And, so I think how do you weigh that?
It'd have to be like 4 number 1 picks or something like that. Like, I think if somebody just gave you a stupid offer But then also in the back of my mind, I'd be thinking, hey, if somebody's willing to pay 4 first-round picks for this guy, maybe I should be thinking about taking him. That's why it's so rare to have a quarterback-needy team trade out of the number 1 pick when there is a quarterback there.
Pass on one, yeah.
Right. It's like, am I really going to trade a chance to take a quarterback when somebody else wants to come up and take him? Probably not. So I think Cam Ward is worthy of the pick, and it seems like that's the way it's going to go. We'll see how it all plays out. Obviously, it's going to be years before we know whether he actually is worthy, but I feel good about where the Titans are with a little over a month to go until the draft. Let's quickly go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey is on the line wanting to chime in on Cam Ward. Go ahead, Trey.
Hey, how you doing today, bud?
Doing good. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I just wanted to say, a month and a half ago, everybody, the national media was saying that Cam Ward wasn't the person that should be picked, number 1. As far as now, all of a sudden, he should be picked number 1.
I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with just the evaluation process of it, right? Like, even Joe Burrow, like, let's think back to Joe Burrow. I think, yes, by the end of the season, in his final year at LSU, I think people knew he was the number 1 pick, but he was projected to be like a 6th-round pick heading into that year. Like, I think as you see more and as you learn more about these prospects, opinions can change. And who knows, maybe the opinion from the Titans and from the rest of the league is that, hey, Cam Ward was the slam dunk number 1 pick when they got it. Like, who knows? Maybe we'll find that out later on. I don't think that's the case. I think the Titans wanted to evaluate their options and see if there was a ridiculous trade offer that came. But I think the Titans, after seeing Cam Ward at the Combine and getting him in the building last week, I think that they've made up their decision that he's going to be the guy for this team, and they've tried to build around him. And starting with the offensive line, weapons, I think, would come next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to chime in, you can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Again, Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today, live from the pub in the Gulch. Teron Davenport is on his way. He's going to join us for the rest of the show. Excited for that. Again, SEC tournament action going on over at Bridgestone Arena. Auburn winning game 1 of the day, the number 1 seed, winning their quarterfinal matchup over Ole Miss. Tennessee and Texas getting ready to start in just a couple of minutes. We'll take a break. Be right back here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in tonight to 94.9 The Fan for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores face Auburn on the road. Pregame at 5:45. First pitch is at 6 p.m. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. And quick reminder, tomorrow's game for Vandy baseball moved up due to weather in the Auburn area. It'll be an 11 a.m. first pitch, 10:45 pregame in Game 2 of this series. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Again, Teron Davenport on his way over here to the pub in the Gulch to join us. He will be on for the remainder of the show. We're covering the SEC tournament this week. One game already done here on quarterfinal Friday. Number 1 seed Auburn beating Ole Miss in the opener. Texas and Tennessee about to tip off over there at Bridgestone. And a quick update on the Conference USA Championship. Semifinal game, MTSU and Jacksonville State. Blue Raiders won in double overtime last night. The Blue Raiders up 17-12 about halfway through the first half right now against the Gamecocks. We're talking Titans here, talking about Cam Ward and him being the assumed first overall pick to the Tennessee Titans in April's draft, which is about 6 weeks away now. Ian, I think I realize why a lot of Titans fans don't want Cam Ward.
Why is that?
I think they're scared. I think Titans fans are a little bit scared because the Titans have been bad at developing quarterbacks in the past. And I've seen that used as a reason not to take a quarterback. And I just don't understand that logic because you can't blame Jeff Fisher. You can't think of Jeff Fisher, who hasn't been with the organization in over 15 years now, to justify not taking Cam Ward because he messed up Vince Young.
Yeah, no.
Or Ken Wisenhunt for messing up Marcus Mariota. Like, all those guys are gone. I get it. It's tough because the Titans outside of Steve McNair have not taken a quarterback high and had success. Like, none of them got into their second contract. Jake Locker flat out retired from football after he was done with the Titans.
Yeah, he did.
So like, I get the hesitance from Titans fans to commit and want to take a quarterback number 1 overall. But I don't think you can let those past experiences dictate what you do with a completely new coaching staff, completely new front office, and a quarterback who's really talented. Again, I will say if you want to buy in on Cam Ward, if you're not there yet, go to Teron Davenport's Twitter, and he quoted a tweet with 10 minutes of Cam Ward's best throws. And if you're like, all right, anybody can find a highlight reel, go watch every throw from Cam Ward's Pop-Tarts Bowl performance. That is on YouTube. You can go find it. And I'm telling you, you will be in the psych ward, as they're calling it, and ready to take Cam number 1 overall after you watch those videos. Because
psych ward, I like it.
That I've seen that on Twitter, the psych ward. Instead of, what was it, suck for the duck with Marcus Mariota.
Okay.
We're going with the psych ward, psych ward.
Yeah.
And I think you will be in there with me after you watch those videos. If not, that's fine. But
all right, I'll have some homework this weekend. Yes,
and you can go after Jared if he says he doesn't believe in Cam Ward. Listening to Jared say that he thinks that 3 to 5 years from now, Sam Darnold is going to be better than Cam Ward, I think is funny because I think we've already seen Sam Darnold's ceiling. Like, last year is the best Sam Darnold we will ever see. I don't think it's going to get any better than that. Sure, Cam Ward could crash and burn, but I think when you're talking about what Cam Ward could be in 5 years versus what Sam Darnold could be in 5 years, I'm on the Cam Ward train all day long. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Again,
it'll be fun to watch. Even even if the team's terrible, because the rest of the roster still could use a little bit of touch up. But
that is true. That is true.
At least I'll have him to watch.
The offense looks a lot better. Just in terms of the offensive line, you have 2 good running backs. Calvin Ridley is an 1,000-yard receiver. You need one more weapon for him. And whether you get that in the draft or a veteran, speaking of which, we were talking about Cooper Kupp. Jeremy Fowler, I think, just put out a report that the Seahawks are trying to bring Cooper Kupp back to Washington. So maybe he returns back to where he played his college days up at Eastern Washington.
I guess they need wide receiver help, huh?
Right. Yeah, after trading away DK Metcalf. So we'll see. Maybe Cooper Kupp ends up there, and he can be Sam Darnold's top weapon or second weapon. Jackson Smith-Njigba up there too. Let's see. Let's go to our text line here. One of our texters on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says Arroyo from Miami is good at tight end. Yeah, he's a good player. I don't know. He says could be had in the 4th. I'm not sure about that. I think he might be a day 2 guy, but would be nice to give Cam Ward a familiar weapon, and maybe you could even go with Restrepo later on in the draft. He could be around on day 3. Eli from Smyrna says, why is there no consideration for Jackson Dart? What about Jackson Dart's highlights? He had multiple 500-yard games. I actually kind of think Jackson Dart sneaks into day 1 just because teams are desperate for quarterbacks, and he could end up being a project guy, kind of like Jordan Love maybe when he got drafted. Like mid to late 20s, team wants to take a chance on a guy who sits for a couple years. I could see that. And then Matthew in Nashville says 2026 will be tank for Arch. I don't know. Like, I like Arch Manning, and I think he's looked good when he's been out there. But if his name was Arch Johnson, is he considered the top quarterback heading into next year? I don't think so. Like, I think the Manning name draws a lot of those headlines.
Especially around here.
Right. And I get it, where heading into last year, if you're a Titans fan, you're looking at the 2026 quarterback class, and you're like, wow, the Titans could either get Nico and get the, stop spitting in the faces of Vols fans, as has been said before, or you could go get Arch Manning and bring the Manning name to Nashville. Like, those seem to be good options, but both of those guys, I don't really feel like they're slam dunk top 5 picks right now. They could obviously change that. They have a whole other season coming up, but none of those guys I look at and say immediately, I want them over Cam Ward when the Titans already have the number 1 pick. Let's take a quick break here. Coming up, Chris Sanders is going to join us for his weekly visit, usually on Wednesdays, but moved over to Fridays with Vandy basketball on Wednesday. We'll see if Teron Davenport gets here in time to talk to his good friend Chris Sanders. We'll chat with him coming up next. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live from the pub in the Gulch today as we continue our coverage of the SEC men's basketball tournament. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today as TD joins us here in the Gulch. TD, got a little turned around in downtown Nashville today, but you made it. Oh.
Yeah, it was quite an adventure, man. I was stuck in the garage over there at Assembly Food Hall for about 25 minutes.
Wow.
And then just trying to navigate my way over here. Ooh, I tell you what, when the Super Bowl is here in a couple of years, that infrastructure, it better be improved. But regardless, I'm on foot.
Yeah, do not
not
drive that weekend. Yeah. It is a busy weekend here in Nashville. St. Patrick's Day, obviously the SEC tournament. So plenty of traffic throughout the streets. But just in time, TD, as we are now joined on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com by Chris Sanders. We get a little Run TMC action here on this Friday. Chris, thanks for calling in. How's it going?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm still stuck in traffic.
Yeah,
seems to be a trend today.
It definitely is bad.
No,
if you could avoid downtown, do that.
No, I'm in the line at Krispy Kreme, man. I'm good.
There you go.
Oh man, the inner offensive lineman is coming up.
Oh man, I weigh about 230 right now with a bad haircut. Come on, man.
Well, Chris, it's been a busy week for the two-tone blue. Free agency this week, made a couple of bigger moves, a couple of smaller moves. What have been your thoughts on what the Titans have done in this first week in the new league year to try and shore up this roster?
You know, I think it's okay. And the reason why I'm saying it's okay is because if you look at, what was the Achilles heel of the Tennessee Titans last year was the offensive line. So now you're starting to get some guys in here that can maybe do something. I'm going to put, that in quotations, maybe, just like Dan Moore and a couple of guys, Zettler, if I pronounce his name right. But you got guys that can come in here and make an impact at the offensive line, because the thing about it is you can have a great wide receiver, a great quarterback. You can even have the best running back. But if you don't win in the trenches, if you don't win at the offensive line or the defensive line, it's not going to work.
And that's the way that Mike Bergonzi specifically expressed he wanted to build this. So he's addressed that. You mentioned Zeitler. You mentioned Daniel Moore. You look at Draymond Jones adding him. So the trenches, they've addressed it somewhat, but the receiver position is still one that remains to be taken care of. Do you think that they could enter – can they enter this draft without signing any veteran receivers?
They got to sign
outside
somebody,
of Van Jefferson?
Yeah, but you know what's so cool about it? Who's our dude? We already know who our dude is. Golden Matthew. He's that dude. I mean, I know he's in the
you know what? Go ahead and put the plan for him to be with the Titans in a nice tight package and send it to one of the teams in the top 20.
I know.
It's not happening.
I mean, you got to get somebody else. But here's the thing. I know everybody's looking past Van Jefferson. I think he can come in here and actually contribute and be in the rotation, because if you look at this guy, I know he's been traveling to, a couple of teams. I think he was with Pittsburgh last year. But as a guy who can run routes, a guy who's a polished wide receiver in route running, I think he's going to come in here and help maybe, quote quotations, maybe the quarterback that they draft in the first round with Cam Ward.
Speaking of Cam Ward, Chris, it seems like the Titans are zeroing in on him. Thoughts on that being the plan for the Titans? Instead of trading back, adding some draft capital, maybe trying to get a quote-unquote generational defensive player like Abdul Carter, but instead going with the quarterback number 1 overall.
I mean, I think that's what you have to do. I mean, just like what we talked about earlier, I mean, you can have all the great players. You can have the great wide receiver. You can have the great running back. But if you don't have a quarterback that's a general and leading your offense, it's not going to work. I mean, if you look at some of the quarterbacks in the league, the reason why their teams were successful because the quarterback play is really, really good. Look at Mahomes. Look at Josh Allen from Buffalo. You have to get somebody in here that's going to take this team to another level. And I'm not saying that's Cam Ward. I'm not saying it's Shedeur. I'm just saying you got to make sure you bring somebody in here that changes your organization, and maybe that's Cam.
I'm sure you've seen the pressers from the combine, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. Yeah. Is there anything that makes you think either of those guys would be capable of leading this organization?
And this is just my opinion. I think both can, but both bring something totally different. If you look at Cam Ward, the one thing I love about him is his escapability. His escapability is flat out off the chain. I mean, he can extend the play. He throws the ball in different ways, and he gets it to the wide receiver. But then you got Shador Sanders that might not have the strongest arm, but he brings a type of attitude. He brings a type of swag. He brings a type of, attitude that you need on an offensive situation to where it's been depleted. So they bring different things. They bring different elements. But if I had to pick a guy or pick one of those guys, I would pick Cam Ward.
Okay, and you described the on the field. I'm talking about as a leader, a guy that could look 10 other men in the face and say, hey,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
going this way, and they're going to go with it. That's what I'm talking about, not arming. I'm lead men.
Then I'm going to go with Shador Sanders. And the reason why I'm going to go with him is everybody takes what he says as being cocky. No, you want a quarterback that's sure of himself, sure he's going to make the play. Have this not a cockiness, but an attitude of I'm going to make the play. So if you have a guy like that has that type of attitude, and he injects his DNA into everybody else's DNA, then you're going to create something special. And that's exactly what I had with Steve McNair. Steve McNair didn't say anything. Steve McNair barely said anything, but he led by example, and that's exactly what Shador Sanders does.
Talking with Chris Sanders, forever Titans wide receiver here on Stillman and Company. Chris, we got the SEC basketball tournament in town this week.
Whoa!
March Madness. No, they are not in the SEC tournament. I believe they're on the bubble for the March Madness.
They might not make it.
Are you a big March Madness guy? Like, are you big college basketball?
Not really, man. If Ohio State ain't in it, it don't even matter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I like to watch basketball. I like to watch March Madness when it actually, gets into the tournament. When it gets into the tournament, then that's when my eyes are wide open. Because when I'm looking at teams in the SEC, Big Ten, I don't know these guys. So I'm like, there's nobody I can pinpoint to. I'm watching him. But when you get into the March Madness of the tournament, it doesn't matter who you know. There's always going to be an upset. There's always going to be a Cinderella story. And it's kind of like Days of Our Lives, and it's just something really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be I would be camped out on the couch if I wasn't going with the women's team. Ohio State's women's team is going to be up there seated pretty high, so you'll have those Buckeyes in the tournament at the very least.
Hey, they got a squad, man. I remember when I was at The Ohio State University, we had Jackson as it was on the boys' basketball team, but the girls' basketball team was really, really good. The head coach back then was Nancy Darsh. He was a great coach, so I'm rooting for the Buckeyes.
Well, you talk about girls basketball, and Jake has a Vanderbilt polo on.
What? Oh no,
Michaela Blakes. Have you seen her play?
No, is she pretty good?
Shame on you. Shame on you. Look, she's so good. I went to one game. I'm getting season tickets next year. She's a freshman. This freshman has dropped 50 points twice. Twice. Tell me another freshman that's done that, Jake.
There are none.
Exactly.
She is actually the only player, man or woman, this year to drop 50 twice.
This is why I say shame on you. She's right here in the backyard.
I know.
I'm going to have season tickets. Look, tell Faith that I'm borrowing you for the evening. That's what we're going to see that.
Hey, but what about that young lady from USC that's supposed to be red hot?
Yeah,
Michaela just broke her record.
Thank you. Thank you.
See, man. Hey, before we get off the air, TD, I want to ask you a question. I know we're getting off subject a little bit, but if you're the general manager, no, let me break this. Let me go a different route. If you're a wide receiver in the NFL and the general manager came to you and said, okay, we got Shador Sanders on the clock, we got Cam on the clock as a receiver, and he asked you, we're going to pick one of these guys, who would you want to be your quarterback and why?
Woo! You asking me to pick a Benz or a Beamer?
Yeah. You know the reason why I'm asking you is because I want the listeners to understand that it's coming from a wide receiver with experience, and now he's picking out what he does well. My bad.
Look, I'm not going to waver from where I've been since October, and I talked to Shador, and I told him, he asked me who I would pick. I said you, and I'm not wavering from that. I love the way his timing, his anticipation, his accuracy. I want that quarterback that if, I run a curl and that safety is barreling down on me and he's about to hit my inside shoulder, I want to know that ball going to the outside means that I got to turn to the outside because that's going to be taking me away from where the contact is. I love both of those guys. And I'm going to go Shador.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted them to hear, because a lot of people say, "Oh, he's got a strong arm." No, and you're looking at it through the lenses of a wide receiver. So that's why I wanted the listeners to understand. It's not just about a guy having a strong arm. It's about throwing it in a tight window, making a play, making a tough throw where I want the football. So when you get Cam Ward or Shador Sanders in here, that's what they're going to bank it off of.
It's a good point. And I mean, everybody's assuming it's Cam Ward, but it could be Shador Sanders.
Oh, it's going to be Cam. I'm just saying, if, you put me on the spot with that, and I'm sticking to, make no mistake about it. Shador that's one of my favorite prospects in this class.
Well, Chris, thanks for joining us. Always great to have you on the show. Hope you have a great weekend.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you, guys. You have a good one.
All right, Wesley.
Chris Sanders.
All right, Sam Cassell.
You're supposed to hang up the phone. Tyrone Hill, the fool.
If you want more of that Talking with TD podcast, you can get it every week. Chris Sanders, forever Titans wide receiver, joining us on the program. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. 1 hour in the books. When we come back, we'll keep talking number one pick. We'll also keep you updated on the SEC tournament going on down the street. Bridgestone Arena, and Cory Curtis going to join us at 3:15. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, presented by Southern Bank of Tennessee, your bank for small business. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. We are live at the pub in the Gulch. Why wait for St. Patrick's Day? The party starts early at the pub Nashville. Enjoy proper shenanigans all weekend long with Irish fare, drink specials, and live entertainment, including Irish step dancers, bagpipes, and more. Don't miss the fun. Also, Guinness specials all day. Enjoy all the pub's awesome food, including Irish fare like corned beef and cabbage and Guinness stew. Just talk with Chris Sanders. Great conversation with Forever Titans wide receiver, as always. And coming up in the next segment, Cory Curtis is going to join us. Quick update on the SEC men's basketball tournament as we give you updates all day long from the action over there at Bridgestone Arena. Tennessee and Texas have gotten underway in the second quarterfinal of the day. The number 8 Vols, number 4 seed in the tournament, are up 17-14 on Texas at the under 12 timeout. TD, a little bit of news in the break there. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase look like they're getting close to deals with the Bengals to stay in Cincinnati. Been a long saga with both those guys, but could get both of them done in short order here.
I really didn't think they were going to be able to do that, but you know, Joe Burrow said, I need my Batman and Robin. I need them both, you know what I mean, to help me out. And it's a great thing if they're going to be able to keep them. They managed to get Gesicki back, but will this cost them Trey Hendrickson? You know, and
it's a good point.
Is this trending towards one of those teams that has all their money invested in offense and has to win games like 34-32, those types?
And that's what they did last year. Big reason that they missed the playoffs in that last year, despite the great play from Joe Burrow. We were talking with Chris Sanders about the number 1 pick. And, TD, I don't know if you were listening. I was giving my case for Cam Ward in the first hour. Let's go to our phone lines, see what Dustin thinks. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Dustin has thoughts on the first overall pick. Dustin, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, happy Friday, guys. I think you hit it spot on when you said that the Titans fans are just a little bit timid or scared that things just don't work out for us. Like, even, for example, when we got the number 1, seed and had the home game and all that, and even when Derrick Henry was on that hot run, just the stars just don't seem to align for us right now. So, but I don't have a problem with either quarterback, Cam or Shedeur, but to me as a Titans fan, I would feel a lot better if we traded the first pick and stayed somewhere in that top, 3 to 5 range, and then go ahead and take Shedeur. And at least at that point, it's kind of like we're hedging our draft picks, where if we can get that extra number 1 and we really feel like we need to, we'd have 2 of them next year to move up and get, a quarterback if he's not the option. But I just feel like going all in and not getting anything back on Cam Ward just seems so risky in my eyes as a Titans fan, because we're a long way from, we're not one quarterback away from being relevant right now. So just wanted to see what you guys thought about that, and if you thought that might be a decent plan for him to, consider. So
before you hang up, tell me,
okay,
what does it mean to go all in on Cam and not get anything back? Like, how do you know you're not going to get a return on Cam and him be the player that he appears to be ready to be?
I guess that's not really my concern. Isn't that so much? My concern is that if, let's just say Cam does work out, that's great. But if he doesn't, we're kind of back to square one again. If we, traded back a couple picks and took Shedeur, he could end up being the guy. But even if he's not, we're still going to be fine because we have a move to make after that, if that makes sense. So
I hear what you're saying. I was more focused on the part where you said package a couple picks next year and get a quarterback. Like, how do we know the guys next year? Because, Drew Aller hasn't showed me anything to believe that he could be the leader. I know Arch Manning has the Manning last name, but in those 9 games, has he shown you that he could be the guy? Nico, I'll let you pronounce his last name. There you go. Nico is still a developing quarterback also. So I'm just confused because everybody wants to kick the can down or look at possibly kicking the can down the next year.
The next year's class is always better.
But how do you know that they're going to be better than Cam?
Well, I don't even think that it's about them necessarily being better than Cam. I just think that it gives us a higher percentage chance of actually hitting someone that's going to be successful if we have 2 opportunities at it. And hopefully we wouldn't need it. Hopefully Shedeur would just be the guy, or Cam, like you said. But for me as a Titans fan, I'm just nervous about putting all my eggs in one basket for one guy. And I feel like with Shador, I kind of feel like I have like a backup option if he doesn't work out. That's just kind of where I'm at with it. But if we take Cam, I'll be excited as well. So go Titans, and you guys have a great weekend.
Thanks for the call, Dustin. Yeah, the one thing that will get me on that is if you're taking one of these quarterbacks, you're not trading down. Because if you love one of these quarterbacks, you don't risk losing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say you trade down to 2, and you're like, you know what? We think the Browns like Cam Ward. We can trade down to 2, pick up an extra third or second, and still get Shador Sanders. Well, guess what? What if the Browns putting up smoke screens that they like Ward and they want Sanders first, and you don't like Ward? I understand that's not what actually is happening, but if you want one of these quarterbacks, you take them first overall because you can't risk them getting taken by somebody else.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
I think it's always, and I am guilty of this as well, that in the draft, I think everybody wants to trade down because of the mystery of what could be in door number 2. It's like, all right, door number 1, we get this one player, but door number 2 gets us this mystery future first-round pick, and we get to look forward to having 2 first-round picks next year, which I get. It's fun as a fan base when you're looking through mock drafts in February and March and you get to see 2 picks instead of 1.
It's always fun to be able to do that.
But I'd rather have a franchise quarterback.
It's more fun to watch your team win.
Right.
And I think a franchise quarterback will do that for you.
I think Cam Ward is worthy of the first overall pick, and I think he's going to be the first overall pick. That's all of the indications that we've seen. I think the betting markets have started to shift that way. Mm-hmm. You're seeing that the Browns and Giants both having Russell Wilson in for visits because I think they're starting to realize, hey, we're not getting Cam Ward. So I think the Titans, they have found who they believe is their quarterback of the future, and they're going to build around him. And they have already started with the offensive line this week, and we're going to talk plenty more about that and free agency with TD throughout the show. We are live here at the pub in the Gulch as we cover the SEC men's basketball tournament all week long. Again, the second quarterfinal of the day is going on. The battle to be the real UT, the 4th-seeded Tennessee Volunteers, the 13th-seeded Texas Longhorns, who have won their first 2 games of the week. Right now, the Vols are up 3, 9:33 to go in the first quarter, or first half. I'm used to women's basketball. First half over there at Bridgestone Arena. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Coming up next, Cory Curtis going to join us from News 2 here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Fireball Whiskey. It's that time of the week. It's Fireball Hot Take Friday. It is the best. You know, Fireball Whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night and to start your weekend than with ice cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. I love Fireball Whiskey. Again, goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. So be sure to kick off your weekend the right way with Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are broadcasting live from the pub in the Gulch and also the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman, and we are now joined for his weekly visit on the program on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by Cory Curtis from News 2. Cory, hope you're having a great start to your weekend, and thanks for joining us.
And my pleasure. This is my favorite week of the year.
Yes, it is a great week. We got the SEC men's basketball tournament in town, Selection Sunday coming up, NFL free agency, and we'll start there, Cory. Titans making a couple of big moves in free agency to shore up the offensive line this week, bringing in Dan Moore on a 4-year deal, Kevin Zeitler on a 1-year deal. Do you think, Cory, that if it is the case that the Titans are taking Cam Ward at number 1, which all signs point to that being the case, that the Titans have done enough up front to set him up for success in year 1?
Well, I mean, they certainly have a more reasonable plan than they had a year ago when they were just kind of hoping the right side would work out. I mean, you've got proven bodies all the way across the front. You just got to have some time to put it all together. You know, I know the thought is that Latham will be better at right than he was at left, and so you get a dramatic improvement on that side. And then, you know, even though you overpaid for more, you know what you're getting. And so I think that there's some thought there that yes, you will. And, you know, also, you know, the quarterback play can be better and help those guys out too.
Go ahead.
So when you look at you talk about Latham, I thought that you were going to say something else after the quarterback play, but you do make a good point. No, you're fine. You make a good point about that, you know, because the sacks, was it 54 sacks, I think it was, that were given up. There was a good amount that were on the quarterbacks, but you flip Latham to the right side. How do you feel that redirects his career?
You know, the thing about today, Teron, is that nowadays everybody's got 2 pass rushers. And so you kind of have to have 2 tackles to handle that, you know, whereas before you just had to have a mauler, you know, at the right side, kind of, you know, the big David Stewart kind. And Latham is more of a combative mauler than he is, you know, the fluid athlete, you know, that, you know, a Brad Hopkins and a Taylor Lewan and a Michael Roos were. But, you know, I don't think it's going to cost them that much. You know, you get guards making $20 million a year now. So I don't think it's a position where it's necessarily going to cost him, you know, all this money down the line. I do wonder at some point, you know, the Titans have 2 first-rounders that they're going to have to pay. Are they going to be able to pay them both, you know, when the time comes? You know, Skronsky and Latham, I think that remains to be seen. But, you know, he's played both sides. I think if they want to switch him or if somebody else wants to switch him back to the left side, I don't think that's unheard of and something he can't do.
You talk about pass rush, Cory, and I feel like that's one of the 2 spots where you can clearly look and see the Titans need some more bodies. Wide receiver would be the other one.
Yeah.
Draymond Jones gets brought in, but he's a big edge. He can play a little inside, a little outside. You still got Arden Key on the roster, but do you think the Titans need to use one of their, whether they trade back in the second round or just stick and pick? Do you think they need to use a day 2 pick on an edge rusher to shore up that part of the roster?
Well, I would think that's probably in the plan. This is a really good edge class, so they can probably still get a really good one. And that's where it would really benefit them to have a second day 2 pick because they do need a young pass rusher who can do something. I mean, let me ask you guys, is with Draymond Jones, do you guys expect him to be on 2 feet or to be in a 3-point stance?
Both. I think he's going to be Danico Autry. Maybe not the same degree of effectiveness, but that's what he's going to be.
Because when they put Danico up on 2 feet, I was stunned, but he did it. And he did it pretty well. So Draymond's what, 280?
Yeah, 281.
281. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, because I mean, even Harold Landry was down in a 3-point stance a lot of times.
Yep.
So yes, I mean, that gives them some options, but I mean, they still need two, in my opinion. Whether they bring in another free agent and a draft pick or they draft two. You've got to be able to bring those guys in waves. And, I like Arden Key, but is Arden Key more of a third pass rusher or is he a second in your mind? To me, he's kind of a third.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you look at what the Eagles have been able to do. I mean, I always say the same joke. It's like the zombies in I Am Legend. Like they just keep coming and coming and coming. They're like 3 deep on both sides. Now you look at Draymond Jones. Last year for Seattle, he stood up and he rushed from a stand-up perspective also. So I do agree. Maybe Azeez Ojulari, Charles Omenihu, these are guys you can add. But on the flip side of it, when you talk about the receivers, what do you make of – look, Van Jefferson is a great story. He's coming back home.
Yeah.
He, in my opinion, is a very underrated route runner. But is that it? Like, do they cancel it and wait till the draft to address the pass catchers?
Elijah Moore is still out there, isn't he?
You speaking my language.
Yeah, Elijah Moore is out there, a guy with 120 catches the last 2 years. I know he's not perfect, but he's also affordable. I think Spot Track had his market value at about $4 million. So if you could sign him for 2 years and $8 million and see what you got, you could bring in another guy who can catch the ball. I think obviously Bryce Oliver is going to get a look, but they need some speed. They need. Calvin Ridley's got speed, but they could use some more speed as well. And I said I don't have the whole list of guys who are out there, but it's not a great draft class for receivers either. So, I do think this. I think Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard are going to get a lot of touches this year. And I don't have a problem with that.
Talking with Cory Curtis from News 2. Cory, transitioning over to the SEC tournament quickly here. Vanderbilt losing in their first game back on Wednesday, losing their last 3 games of the year heading into Selection Sunday. Do you still feel like the body of work is enough, not only to get them in the field, but maybe to keep them out of Dayton next week?
How many quad 1 wins do they have? 6?
Yes, I believe so. Maybe 5?
Yeah. And I think they were 10 or 11 going into the tournament. I guess it's possible that they wind up in Dayton. You just got to look. You've got to really root for like Memphis to win their league.
Right.
Because this is where when teams steal bids, that it kicks you back. And so that's what you've got to be on the lookout. If you're the Vanderbilt Commodores right now, how many bids get stolen? Because if it's not a terrible year with bid thieves, then they're probably still going to be okay. Obviously the way they finished does not help, with 3 consecutive losses. But I still have to feel like they, just a couple of weeks ago they were listed as a 7. So I can't believe they're going to go from a 7 to out for 3 losses.
Usually around this time, I'm driving home from picking up my daughter at school, and I always hear Stillman say the Fireball Hot Take Friday.
There we go.
So I am delighted to be able to ask you what your Fireball Hot Take of the day is, and it's going to be good to not have it make me like, change direction on the highway.
You know what? I'm going to say something that's probably going to get all of Nashville in an uproar, okay? Because I feel like this guy had a bad year, but he's just caught a lot of hate. And let me just say, Will Levis is allowed to get better. He is allowed to get better. That doesn't mean he should start next year. Believe me, I think they should draft Cam Ward and he should start. But all the people is you got to trade, get Levis, you got to get rid of him, and maybe they will. But all I know is this: that after 2 years of Malik Willis, I wasn't sure he could take a snap, all right? And he came back the 3rd year and was a completely different player. That's not saying that's what will happen with Will Levis, but that's just saying let the guy practice, see what he can do, and you know what? Maybe he's an affordable backup for you the next 2 years. But I think he's way too young to just write him off, especially on a rookie contract that really helps you out cap-wise. And it is possible that he could get better. It's not impossible. It's possible.
I like it. I like the hot take this week from Cory Curtis. Always a pleasure having you on, Cory. Hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the basketball, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, enjoy the tournament. And by the way, I know we enjoy watching the Preds win. They've won 4 in a row, and they're going for 5 tonight, but they are playing their way out of a top 3 pick, and that kind of stinks.
That is very true. Yes, the Predators have as soon as they trade away everybody, they have found their way to 4 straight wins. So we'll see what they do tonight. Cory, thanks for joining us. Cory Curtis from News 2 here on the program. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. We got a fun rest of the show planned here live from the pub in the Gulch. Quick update on the game going on over at Bridgestone Arena. Tight one between Tennessee and Texas. 2:57 to go in the first half. Right now, the Vols up 37-33 in that one. We'll keep you updated throughout the day. We'll come back and talk a little more about Cam Ward and what the Titans have done this week in free agency. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament all day today, presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, thenewcumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today on Stillman and Company. Just chatted with Cory Curtis over from News 2. Great conversation. Great hot take from him as well. A little bit of defense for Will Levis today, which, Will Levis gets a lot of flack. He did not have a great year last year, but I agree with him that young quarterbacks aren't always going to start out great. They have to get better. I'm not saying he's going to be a starting quarterback in the league, but he could turn himself into a viable backup. TD, I wanted to get to a text on our text line. I had this written in the grid actually as well. One of our texters says Cam Ward would be the QB4 in an average draft. Look at his scouting grade. Kenny Pickett's and Malik Willis's were both higher. He would be the biggest reach at number 1 in the modern NFL era. Can you name one player with a lower grade than his taken at first overall?
What is his grade and what outlet are you using?
Right. Like that's what I wanted to say is that just go watch the player. How about that? Go watch the player and tell me that he isn't a talented quarterback.
Well, see that's the problem a lot of times. Like I had a Titans fan reach out to me yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, well, I don't know if I see it with Cam Ward. He doesn't have the arm strength." What?
The ball jumps off his hand.
It screams. You know that personally from watching them against Virginia Tech. Like I think we are in an era where too many people allow someone else to dictate how they're going to, and then you mix that with so many people who may watch a few things, but them watching these few things is the equivalent of me reading a Chinese textbook.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work because I don't know what I'm reading, just like a lot of these people don't know. And I'm not saying like everybody's dumb or anything like that, but I'm just saying it just amazes me. Like, what is it about Cam Ward that gives him such a low grade?
Right.
Like, what is it that makes him? Why is Arch Manning, Drew Aller, like, why are these guys just automatically next year going to be better than Cam?
It doesn't make a ton of sense. It is. You're right. It's like people read Daniel Jeremiah or Todd McShay or Field Yates or Mel Kiper Jr., whoever this draft expert is that says, yeah, Cam Ward last year would have been QB5 or whatever they say. And then that is their opinion.
Right. And they just stick with that.
And I'm not saying I'm a quarterback play expert. Like, I watched a couple YouTube videos and watched every throw from a few Cam Ward games. And I came away with it saying, yeah, that's a first-round quarterback right there. I'm not an expert.
The thing is, though, if I were to ask you, okay, what do you like about Cam Ward? Like, you could explain it to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this guy that reached out to me, he's like, oh, well, Jackson Dart is the best quarterback. And I'm like, come on, man. And he says, oh, well, it's because of his potential. And I'm like, have you not think Cam Ward has potential?
I'm not.
Like, if you can't take a stand, like make a decision, and then back it up with some type of evidence, like I don't even want to talk to you. Really.
Right. And it's not apples to apples. Like the transitive property doesn't always work. It's a team game. But just go watch Cam Ward in the swamp last year versus Jackson Dart in the swamp last year and tell me which quarterback is better. Cam Ward lit up Florida. And I know the Gators got much better throughout the season as the season went along. But
right.
Cam Ward, I think the two best games that I watched were Florida and the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And Jackson Dart, with the chance to lock in a college football playoff appearance, lost at Florida. So, again, not apples to apples, but just a quick comparison against a similar opponent.
And real quick, that's not to say I don't like Jackson Dart. I came away from the combine watching him throw.
I think he's a first-round pick.
His time, definitely, I think he's a first-round pick. I'm like, man, the timing on the deep in-breaking routes, right on point, and these are to receivers that he hasn't thrown to. And, boy, he was throwing 50-yard handoffs, you know what I mean, down the field. He's a good quarterback, but I just don't think he's in the class of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
I agree. Let's go to our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brad wants to chime in on the Titans. Brad, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, TD, how you doing?
What's going on?
Hey, look, guys, I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit on Cam. And so if that's the way that it goes, then great. So now you're going to switch the strategy to that 35th pick. And here's where my head is. If there's a guy that you got with a grade 1, on him, and he's fallen to the second round, and it's a position in need. So think of, James Pierce Jr. or Luther Burden III. Okay, it's too tempting. You got to take that. But if that's not the case, I think a lot of people would say, could you turn that pick 35 into a second and another third, or a second and another fourth in the draft? And at that point, if we're doing that, and again, like you said, you always have to have a second team that's willing to do that. But if you look at the last couple of years, there's so many deals that are looking to move up right into the top of that second round. And two things. What I would like to say is, if they do go the route where they flip the 35th pick and they pick up an extra pick, whether it be a third or a fourth, maybe would they look at that Restrepo to team him up with Cam? I'm not sure what grade you have on him, Teron, but I've been watching some of the film, and he jumps off too. And I'm thinking, we do need to. Would that pick be a good fit in the Titan system? Do you have him at a high second? And then the second question is there anything wrong with doubling up on defensive end on the third and fourth pick? Just go back to back. One of the guys in the third or fourth that I'm looking at, if he falls that far, is Jack Sawyer. I'll hang up and listen.
Look, Brad covered a lot in that call, and that was one of the best calls I've heard.
That was great
all year.
Yep.
And it's just funny because he sat there and married both of our ideas. I don't know if he was tapped in to these mics while we were off the air, but
right.
He married both of our ideas, and that the Luther Bird and James Pierce ain't going to be there.
No, James Pierce is a top 20 pick. Yeah.
Howie Roseman for sure is not going to let him fall past 32.
Right.
But Luther Burden, there's a chance. And that's a guy that you mentioned at the top of the second round.
Yeah.
But then also what I had said about, hey, you know what? The move back doesn't have to happen at 1. It can happen at 35 and you bump down. And that's where we talked about Jalen Noel. We talked about some of the other ones. And then he brings up Xavier Restrepo. And let me tell you something. That little dude right there is, what did Mike Vrabel say about Aaron Brewer? Tough as a $2 steak.
Yeah.
That's him. And he has no fear. He's going to catch the deep ball for you. He'll work that slot. I compare him actually to Adam Humphries. Like, he's that same type of player, that's a crab that could go forward just as fast as he could go sideways, and that's a problem to cover. So you do have that in him. I don't know about second round. I think he would be one of those guys, if you could finagle somehow 35, drop down, 10, 15 picks and maybe acquire another third round pick, if it's a late one or something like that, then okay, you're looking at him. Here's the thing, though. I wouldn't take Restrepo over Dante Thornton. And I think you look at just the way his speed shows up on film, you look at what he ran, and you pair those two, I think he's going to be, a third or fourth round pick. So you got that. But then he talked about the pass rushers and getting 2 of them. Absolutely. If you don't sign one of these free, you have to get 2 of them. And you could, as you mentioned, never have too many. Jack Sawyer is a guy that he gives me those Trey Hendrickson vibes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's going to lead the league in sacks. But what I'm saying is, I remember watching Trey Hendrickson at the Shrine Week, and I watched one practice. I said, that dude has a motor like no other, and he's going to be a solid pro for years. And that's the way I feel about Jack Sawyer. I think it's going to be the same. So that's a good mention later on.
And Sawyer did it on the biggest stage, too. Came up with the huge play that helped Ohio State clinch the national championship over Texas. I do think that's the Titan strategy right there. I think Brad just laid it out for you. You're taking Cam Ward first overall. And then I think at 35, if somebody falls into your lap, and I would have a hard time if Luther Burden is there at 35 and they don't take him, because I was talking with Adam about this on Wednesday. Luther Burden was a top 10 consensus pick heading into last year. And I understand he didn't blow people away last year, but Brady Cook was hurt a good amount of the year too.
Yeah.
I understand he didn't have a phenomenal year, but that dude is still as talented as anybody in that wide receiver class. If he's there at 35, I think you sprint the ticket in.
Yeah, this was a top 10, top 15 pick last year. The Titans had him in. They had a visit, one of their 45 what do you call them?
The top, the 30 visits or whatever.
Not top 30 visits. One of the 45 formal meetings at the combine.
Yeah.
They asked him, "Hey, look, like, what happened from last year to this year?" And it was kind of like it was bittersweet in that they knew he knew what happened, but he was just saying, "Man, it was a lot of stuff," and he wouldn't throw anybody in particular under the bus.
Yeah.
Look, Brady Cook, come on, man. Hey, come on. I think it's that, but then also you look at he had a good 70-plus yard touchdowns called back too, but they really liked meeting with him. You know what I mean? So yeah, if he's there at 35, I could definitely see that being a way that they go.
But I think if he's not, or a player of his caliber isn't, trading down is probably the way to go, because you do need more top 100 picks. And that's probably the best way to get them. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. This week's Nashville's best deal is Boomba's Pizza and Watch Bar. Just in time for the SEC tournament, score half off a $30 gift card. Enjoy their award-winning pizza and handcrafted beverages. Visit them in Nashville, Spring Hill, or Murfreesboro. Visit thegamenashville.com/deals now while supplies last. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. No one wants to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency. Trust me, I hate dealing with emergencies like that. And most of the time, you don't know what it'll cost, or if it will get fixed right, or if the person coming to your home is just going to sell you something that you absolutely do not need. Well, guess what? When you call Hiller, you don't have to deal with any of that. Their experts are going to solve the problem, and they're going to solve it quickly. The price you're told is the price that you will actually pay, with no hidden fees or surprises on your bill. So book online now by visiting happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call that fish truck today.
Wrapping up hour number 2 on this Friday, Stillman and Company. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared today. We are live at the pub in the Gulch as we cover the SEC men's basketball tournament all week long. Right now, quarterfinal number 2 on this Friday is at halftime. Tennessee, the 4 seed in the tournament, leading 13th seeded Texas, 41-38. Could have another good finish coming up over at Bridgestone Arena. Auburn, the number 1 seed in the tournament, took care of business today with a 5-point win over Ole Miss. Talking about the Titans' second-round pick right now. We've kind of zoned in. Cam Ward's going to be the number 1 pick. Feels like 99% chance that's going to happen based on the events over the last couple of weeks. But what the Titans do on day 2 is going to be very interesting because you could get a high-value player that falls into your lap at the top of the second round, picking at 35. Yeah. But you also need more picks. You don't have a third-round pick because you traded it for L'Jarius Sneed last year. So what are the Titans going to do? TD, I know that callers, I think, are more in the trade-down area, but I really like the idea of taking a wide receiver at the top of that second round. I mentioned Luther Burden. Maybe Emeka Egbuka falls down there to 35. He might be a first-round pick at this point, but who knows? I look back at the 2020 draft for the Bengals. They took Burrow 1 overall, and then they got him a receiver to grow with him. And I know they took Jamar Chase the next year.
Yeah, but still.
But they got him a receiver that can be his go-to guy in that same draft. I feel like that's a good strategy for the Titans.
No, that's a really good strategy for the Titans. And if there's one of the top guys there at 35, I would definitely look at doing it. I just like what they did in free agency in that they set themselves up to where, okay, they don't have to take a tackle at the top part of, with one of their top picks. The receiver is probably a direction that they more need to go, but also edge rusher. So there's less like, hey, I got to look at this with these top couple picks. And you never want to be in a situation where you do that. So I like how they've put it together. If you marry Cam Ward with a solid rookie receiver and they grow together, like you got something. And you look at when Jamar Chase was injured, T. Higgins stepped up.
He can be a true number 1. And that's why he's going to get paid like a number 1. Cincinnati apparently closing in on locking up both of their star weapons for Joe Burrow in the next couple of days. Let's go to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland is on the line wanting to chime in on the second-round pick. Adam, thanks for calling. What you got for us?
Hey, are you going to be doing your show tomorrow, Jake?
Yes, we are on from 9 to 10:45 tomorrow.
Sweet, okay. They missed you on there last week. It's still a good show. Hey, TD, quick question. So that dude who just called in, he needs a 15-minute segment. I thought he was killing. He was talking about Jack Sawyer, and I seen him beat Tennessee up and down the field the whole game they played in that playoff game. And then also, like, just the whole playoffs, he played really well. So I like that pick a lot. Also, Cam Ward, if you're not like warmed up to the idea, you need to get warm because it's. I don't see any scenario now where the Titans don't take Cam. And I'm like, you look at tape. I look at like old Mac tape from Alcorn State. It's not the same. Nobody was like that, but you start to see some things where you're like, okay, he's the best player on the field. So if he could bring some of that athleticism, if we give him just a little bit of help, he could bring us out of this hell that we're in right now. It's bad. So we need somebody like that. I hope it works out, but I think he's absolutely a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah, no, Adam, you're right. There's tremendous upside with Cam Ward and some of the throws he makes. It just makes you like, wow. Those seams that he throws.
Yeah.
There's times where, he does some things where it's like, all right, bro, you're going to be able to do this against Duke, but you're not going to be able to do this against the Houston Texans. Right. So there is something that has to be reeled in, but that's the whole, like, the challenge of being a coach and being a guy who specializes, who has worked with so many quarterbacks like Brian Callahan has. It's going to be cool watching that all materialize. And like Callahan said when I asked him about, looking at it and saying, hey, I could fix it. He said, you got to be careful not to get cocky. And you also have to understand, like, sometimes, like, that's just their stick.
Right.
And you just let him go. And he pointed to Mahomes and was like, look at the way he goes off schedule and does what he does.
I mean, look at some of the throws Josh Allen makes where he's within, like, 6 inches of the sideline and just heaves it downfield.
Yeah.
And for 99% of quarterbacks, the coaches are probably screaming, just throw it away, just throw it away. But because Josh Allen can do that, he does it, and it makes plays down the field. You're right on the Cam Ward seam passes. That Iowa State tape in the bowl game, there's two. One gets dropped, but he put it right on the hands in the back of the end zone. And then there's the other one where he just drops back, and it's just a flick of the wrist, drops it in the bucket. It's pretty stuff.
It's his arm arrogance that he has. You know what I mean? Sometimes the way he does what he does.
It is. And I do want to mention that when the Titans drafted Will Levis, there was a lot of people saying, well, he sucked in college. Why would he be a good NFL quarterback? If you want a guy who was good in college, Cam Ward was good everywhere he went. Like, Washington State was really good when he was there. He was a winner there. They obviously weren't college football playoff material, but and then at Miami, the defense wasn't great at Miami, which led him to have to come back in a couple of games. Virginia Tech, Cal, he came back and pulled off miraculous wins. He wasn't able to do that against Georgia Tech, and I'm blanking on the Syracuse. Was that the other loss?
Syracuse, yeah, the late one.
But both those games were close, and I wouldn't really put all of that on Cam Ward.
And here's the thing, right? Like, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, but it's kind of like, and I told you after the Virginia Tech game, like, what I love about him. Some of those comebacks were self-inflicted because he made some mistakes.
Right? Yeah.
But to still be able to like tuck that aside and dust himself off and come back and go at it, to me, like that's what you want in your quarterback.
Right. You want a guy with a short memory who can go out there and, hey, I just threw a pick that might have been a back-breaking pick and lost us the game. Guess what? I'm going to go throw 2 touchdowns and make up for it. So Cam Ward has that ability, and it seems like his name will be the first one called by Roger Goodell in Green Bay in just over a month. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. We are live at the pub in the Gulch as the SEC tournament goes down just down the road at Bridgestone Arena. We'll keep you updated on that. Tennessee and Texas going on right now in the second quarterfinal matchup of the day. But we're going to dive back into the free agency class after this. Haven't gotten to dive in fully with TD since he's been here on the moves the Titans have made this week and his thoughts on the overall plan that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker have employed this week. We'll get into that next in hour number 3 here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, your bank for small business. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman on this Friday afternoon. Hope you're having a great start to your weekend. We are out here at the pub in the Gulch. Don't forget, St. Patrick's Day is Monday, March 17th, and the Pub Nashville is the place to be. Kick things off with a special St. Patrick's brunch at 9 a.m., followed by live entertainment all day and the best Irish drinks and bites in town. Been a fun day so far out here at the in the Gulch at the pub. Talking about the SEC men's basketball tournament. Again, Auburn beating Ole Miss in the first quarterfinal matchup of the day, 62-57. Right now, quarterfinal number 2 going on at Bridgestone Arena, 49-44. Tennessee on top of Texas, 15:39 to go in that one. Winner gets the Auburn Tigers. Texas trying to lock up a spot in the NCAA tournament. Tennessee trying to see if they can make a run for a 1 seed. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport with you. TD, we talked a lot about Cam Ward in the first couple hours. Let's move back to the free agent class that the Titans have signed over the last couple of days. Big name was Dan Moore. The big deal, I should say, was Dan Moore, bringing him in 4 years, $82 million back on Monday. But outside of that, it's been a lot of kind of low-risk 1-year, 2-year deals to kind of fill out the roster with Zeitler at right guard. Cody Barton was a 3-year deal at linebacker. Van Jefferson, Xavier Woods, bringing in Johnny Hecker at punter. Does seem like the Titans are practicing what they preach when they talked about what their strategy in free agency was going to be. It's like, hey, we got to supplement with free agency. We want to draft and develop. They made the big swing for a tackle when they needed to, but outside of that, it's been plugging holes all over that roster.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what they've done, right? A whole bunch of 1-year deals. They got some guys that you look at, Zeitler. Hey, if he shows and Johnny Hecker, if these guys show that they have a little more left in the tank,
bring him back.
Go in and re-up them.
Yep.
But then you look at Draymond Jones, who I think could come in here and play really well, and he's a younger player, and he could be a guy, okay, let's do a 2-3 year deal, and you make that work. So I do like what they've done. It's just as you said, they've supplemented. But Mike Bergonzi, he made it clear. He said, you could have Superman back there, but if you can't protect him and if you can't run the football to have balance on offense, forget about it. And that's exactly what they seem to have done. You got the, improvement in pass pro, obviously with Zeitler, but then you look at, left and right tackle, but then you go back to Zeitler and you I'm running right. I'm running behind. Have you seen Kevin Zeitler? Have you seen?
Yeah, they're doing the pass sets while his wife was giving birth last year.
Zeitler looked like the Incredible Hulk, man. I would love to be a running back and run behind he and J.C. Latham. Let's have it.
Yeah, I saw somebody listed off the height and weight of the Titans offensive line, and left side with Moore and Skoronski and Cushenberry, it's 6'4", 6'5", 315, 315, 315. Then it's 340, 360 with Latham and Zeitler over there on that right side. People talk a lot about what that offensive line is going to do for Cam Ward. It might do even more for Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears next year.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you make, and it goes back to what we said about running and establishing balance. I tell you, the best way to make sure that, not to make sure, but to improve the chances that your quarterback is going to do well, have that running game.
Right.
You have that balance. So that way, because, everybody talks about Shedeur Sanders, right, at Colorado. Well, they had no running game.
They had no offensive line, no running game.
His short passing game is what had to be the running game.
Right.
So now if you have a rushing attack, that could balance that out for Cam Ward. And then on top of that, you look at just giving him time. And if he could sit back there and have time and scan the whole field and go to the open guy that way, now you're cooking.
I think it says a lot about the Titans' strategy that they started with left tackle. Jared says he will never have to say the right tackle story again. And I think that was not that they were doing it to appease Jared, but the Titans knew that right tackle has been a huge issue for the last couple of years when it comes to playing Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jalen Duncan and, Leroy Watson and whoever it ends up being at right tackle. It was a rotating door of turnstiles over there, and they finally have found a solution. I understand all of the people who were upset about it on Monday when it's well, why are you paying $50 million guaranteed for the tackle who gave up the most sacks in the league last year? But he's a young tackle who's played 66 games in 4 years for a playoff team. when a tackle gets to the free agent market, they're not going to be cheap if they are a starting level tackle because there aren't 64 starting level tackles in this league. Like everybody's trying to find them. And when you know that you're spending your first round pick on Cam Ward, you know that you're probably not going to find an immediate starter at tackle in the draft. So Dan Moore was really the only person out there in free agency who could fill that void. They did it. They paid what it took to get it. It's not my money. It's not any of the fans' money. You know, Amy Adams-Strunk gave Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker the ability to go and fix the offensive line. I understand Dan Moore is not – he's a guy that I probably hadn't known he existed before Monday, but he is a starting left tackle in the NFL, and those are not easy to come by.
Yeah, so – look, I'm still going to be skeptical about the signing, but I understand the direction that they're going. As in me personally, I thought Morgan Moses was the way to go, bringing the veteran. But, you know, I get what they're doing, right? They're going in, they're signing a guy. And like you said, most tackles, if they hit free agency, they don't end up being a perfect player.
Right.
Like they're not a perfect player when they hit free agency. So there are some warts, and I think this goes back to, okay, well, you know what? Bill Callahan's in place. Let's see how he could go ahead and work with this guy, and maybe he could improve him for the team. And I think that's what you're looking at. But the thing is, even if he doesn't improve, he's a solid starter for years to come. And now you could look at this offensive line, you know, right guard, you find something there.
Right.
For, you know, once Hulk stops playing, that's going to be my name for Zeitler. Once he stops playing, then you don't have to worry about the group at all. Like, it's set. You're good there. Now, of course, you get somebody because you got to always factor in injuries. So you want to have, you know, some guys that gives you depth there. But, yeah, I mean, I think they're in good shape.
And you took it right where I was going to, that Dan Moore, I think Morgan Moses would have been a fine solution for this year, but he's more of a Band-Aid where you're going to keep J.C. Latham at left tackle and you bring in a 34-year-old Morgan Moses to play right tackle for a year or two. But Dan Moore, yes, on paper, he has not been an elite left tackle. I'm not saying he's ever going to be, but you're bringing in a guy who's 26 going on 27 to work with, by all accounts, one of the top two offensive line coaches in the league.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, maybe we can get him to be a good left tackle. Right now, he's probably above average. If we can get him to be good, guess what? We get 4 years of that, and he's still right in the middle of his prime. I think the Titans went for the long-term solution on the offensive line instead of the easy fix, which would have been a guy like Morgan Moses.
And that's exactly what we're saying, right? They went for the long-term solution. They want to be able to – because now you look at it, right? Like, all things going typical, you don't got to worry about left or right tackle for a while.
At least the next 3 years,
you know what I mean? And I know from, you know, being in Philly, the Eagles, right, when they grabbed John Runyon, they paired him up with Trey Thomas. They didn't have to worry about it for a bit. They went to a Super Bowl even. But then Trey Thomas, you know, they let him go free agency to Jacksonville. They traded for Jason Peters. Then they drafted Lane Johnson. And now, guess what you don't have to do again?
Worry about tackle.
Right. And then it's
Jordan Mailata.
Transferred over to Mailata, you know what I mean? And Lane Johnson is still there. And you don't have to worry about tackle at all.
Which is what having two tackles allows you to do, is do what the Eagles did. You take a 6th-round pick and whatever Mailata was. He was a 7th-round pick. Take a 7th-round pick and say, hey, here's a project at left tackle. We're going to take him. Maybe he turns into a guy who only plays 2 years in the league and he's gone. Fine, you only used a 7th-round pick. But guess what? He doesn't have to play for at least a couple of years while we've got Jason Peters over there. Let's see if we can mold him into a tackle. When you have your tackles set up, you can take those late-round picks and see if you can find a diamond in the rough.
And mind you, they used the 1st-round pick on Andre Dillon.
Right, they did.
You know
what
I mean?
They did.
So they had things set up. They invested in the offensive line. I think what Mike Borgonzi is showing is that he is going to say something to stick to it, because that's what he said all along. You invest in the trenches, and that's what they did.
And I hate to bring it up, the Titans did try and do this while they had their tackles in place back in 2020 when they had Luan and they had Kelly was the right tackle at that point. You had 2 tackles. They took a 1st-round tackle trying to make sure they continued to build that offensive line and make sure there weren't any holes. that tackle just so happened to only play 2 snaps for the Titans ever.
Yeah.
So,
he liked the
well, I almost said the same thing, but we'll
leave it alone.
We'll stay away from that. 615-737-1025. We'll take a quick break. We'll keep talking about the Titans free agent class. We'll transition over to the defensive side of the ball coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jared out today. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in here live from the pub in the Gulch. Having a great time out here as we cover the SEC men's basketball tournament, which is going on just down the road at Bridgestone Arena. You can tune into 1025 and 1063 The Game for updates from the SEC men's basketball tournament all day today, presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, the new Cumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. Talking Titans free agency here. Been a big week for the two-tone blue, making a lot of moves. We just talked about the offensive line a little bit, TD. On the defensive side of the ball, no big moves, but a lot of moves that sort of shore up the team for just this year. And then you'd think they start to draft some guys behind some of these free agents that they've brought in to be the long-term solutions. But you bring in Cody Barton and trade out Kenneth Murray. So that's kind of a one-for-one swap there. But Xavier Woods, guy who played every single snap last year for the Seahawks, not for the Seahawks.
Panthers.
The Panthers, yes.
Yeah.
Draymond We are back on Stillman and Company, live from the Gulch here at the pub. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport with you. TD and I just had a phenomenal conversation that no one outside of the lovely people here at the pub could hear. So they got the advanced copy of this conversation we're about to have all over again. So they have to hear it twice. But technology happens. We're back.
Yeah.
We are live from the pub in the Gulch, covering the SEC men's basketball tournament all week long. We're talking about the Titans defensive free agent additions and Xavier Woods. Let's get back to him. A guy that the Titans, we were kind of saying the Titans were in on Javon Holland. I think there were negotiations there, but they went with the cheaper option in Xavier Woods, and a guy who's reliable. He's going to be out there on the field, played every snap for the Panthers last season.
And that's the thing. I'm not sure exactly where we left off, but I did, and we discussed just the durability, right? 91% of the snaps he's played in at a minimum,
right?
In the 6 years that last 6 years that he's played, and then we're looking at 100% in the last 2 years. Like, reliability is critical because Amani Hooker, as good as he is, and he's coming off his best year as a pro, as good as he is, the one ability that is kind of lacking is availability. And he's missed games in each and every year that he's been in the league. So getting a guy that you could count on, so this way, you're not stuck with like Daryl Worley and Mike Brown out there. And that's no slight on Worley or Brown, but those guys are more in a reserve role than your starters. Now you're, knock on wood, going to consistently have, at least one of your starters out there. That helps. But then when you compare, like it's good to be available, but I also want you to be available and impactful. And I think if you look at Xavier Woods, right, and I went back to 2020 when the Patriots came here, and Kenny Vaccaro, right? I love Kenny, man.
Kenny, one of the more underrated Titans signings in the last 10 years.
Kenny is one of my favorite players that I have covered. And I just love the physicality that he played with. James White out of the backfield. Brady dumped it off to him. And let me tell you something. Vaccaro came up and rocked his world. And the whole tone for that game was set. And you just knew from that hit, just from the rip, they're going to mess around and beat the Patriots, and sure enough, that's what they did. I say that to say Xavier Woods, to a lesser degree, is that type of tone setter. He will come up and split your wig. And I said it to Jared yesterday. I don't know if you remember the Panthers game a couple years ago, but remember when everybody was like, come on, Will. Like, Levis, you got to understand.
Right.
Tajay Spears, his mom is watching this game.
I was at that game.
So you saw it. Yeah, that was Xavier Woods that did that. You know what I mean? So you do have a guy that's going to set the tone. And then on top of that, he's around the football, 3 interceptions. And then, there was some pushback. Oh, well, 2 of his 3 interceptions were tip passes. Well, guess what?
That's what you want from your safeties.
Safety to be around the ball to catch the tip pass. So that's a good thing. So I think, secondary-wise, that really solidifies some things. We'll see what L'Jarius Sneed is like coming back. They re-signed Daryl Baker, which I thought was a really good move to give you depth. They got 4 solid corners,
right.
With the young bull, Brownlee and Cheeto.
Yeah, cornerback is good. If the Titans use any resources at cornerback at this point, I think I'd be surprised. I do want to shout out, you mentioned Kenny Vaccaro. That my man catch no balls secondary from back in, what was that, 1920 with Adoree Jackson, who just signed a new deal with the Eagles, Malcolm Butler. But the guys who don't, Kevin Byard, of course, but the guys who don't get enough credit are Kenny Vaccaro and Logan Ryan.
Yeah.
Logan Ryan deserves more props, too, for what he did here.
He was so good.
I loved Logan Ryan when he was here.
He was so good.
He was the best.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, man. So you look at the secondary, right? That's solid. And they always say, and the thing is, right, Mike Berganzi, I remember talking to him at the Senior Bowl, and he told me about investing in the trenches. Obviously on offense, but he said defense too, because that helps everything else out. Yeah. You talk to Warren Sapp, and he'll tell you the front end always helps the back end. But Deion Sanders will come back and say, wait. The back end and coverage is going to help you get the sacks. So it works hand in hand. So let's go to the front end, right? And I think you look at this group, you got Tavondre Sweat, you got Jeffrey Simmons right in the middle there. You got Sebastian Joseph Day, you got Arden Key, you got Jalen Harrell, you got Ali Gay. These guys are all in the mix, and now you add Draymond Jones. And we touched on it earlier. Draymond Jones is, in essence, going to play that Danico Autry role.
Yep.
Like, he bumped inside to play tackle. He played DN, and he stand-up rusher in Seattle. He's done all of those. That's what Danico Autry did. So you had that rotation of those guys on the outside. That's going to help. But here's the thing. You don't have that guy that you know, okay, look, it's 3rd and 12. Go get him. Just go get the quarterback.
Pin your ears back and
go get. You don't have that. And I think that's what they're missing. And that's why I like to piggyback off what you said. Like, hey, man, if you could get an Abdul Carter.
Right.
But it just is at the cost of a Cam Ward. And I don't know that that's a trade-off that I would make.
It's a shame that the Titans do need a quarterback because Abdul Carter would make this defense into one of the top units in football. With the secondary you've got back there, if everybody stays healthy with Snead and McCreary, and whether you want to go Brownlee or Awuzie on the other side, good safeties. Linebacker, we'll get into that in a second, and you've got the interior pressure with Sweat and Simmons and Coburn and Sebastian Joseph Day behind him, but you just don't have that premier edge rusher.
Yeah.
And the Titans, I'm trying to think of the last time the Titans really had a premier guy on the edge. Like, obviously, Javon Curse is the guy that comes to mind, but that was a long time ago at this point. You've had guys who are solid, like Harold Landry's had his double-digit sack seasons.
Jarrell
was on the inside. You had a Rakpo and Morgan who were those guys felt like Harold Landry's to me, where it's like, yeah, they're going to get their sacks, but they're not a guy who the opposing offense fears every time that they step on the field.
You haven't had that one guy on 3rd down where it's like, all right, listen, we got to slide all of the protection to wherever he is.
Like 2 years ago when when Myles Garrett kept shifting from side to side and the tight ends kept going in motion to follow him. Like, I understand not everybody can get a Myles Garrett, but I want that guy where you are so scared of him that you're going to get a delay of game because you cannot leave him one-on-one with your tackle.
Myles Garrett against Andre Dillard, like, that was
– it needed an R rating on it.
Of give me your lunch money. Because it was happening over and over and over and over and over. You need – maybe not to that degree, but you need somebody that you know is going to line up and whoop that guy's behind in front of you and make a play. And it's just so you look at some of these guys draft wise. I mean, I'll tell you one that intrigues me because we talk about trading down. Kyle Kennard is really interesting.
That is a freak athlete out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, was he defensive player? Did he win the Benari? Yeah, he was defensive player of the year nationally.
Yeah. Now he didn't test all that well as far as comparatively speaking,
compared
like
to
your
a Myles Garrett, Shamar Stewart,
to your Landon Jackson, who I really like. Now Landon Jackson, he reminds me of Max Crosby. That's one of those guys. If he's there at the top of the second, that you look at it like, yeah, I might want to go that route. So,
and again. We were using Myles Garrett as the example. I understand those guys don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
Like those guys are pretty much one of one. The Jaguars tried to find that with Travon Walker because those were like the only two guys who've had a 9.99 athletic score or something like that. And they tried to go get him. He hasn't turned out to be that. So obviously you're not getting Myles Garrett, but the Titans, as much you need a quarterback. Every team needs a quarterback. If you're going to be a really good team, you need a guy that is feared on the other side of the ball.
Right. Absolutely. Now, here's the thing, right? Going back to the caller, Brad, earlier.
Yeah.
He mentioned Jack Sawyer. The guy who led the league in sacks last year, he's not super gifted.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that the dude doesn't know how to give up. He doesn't know how to stop on a play. And you look at a lot of his sacks, that's how he would get the sacks to where he's just relentless.
Effort sacks.
And I think Jack Sawyer is another guy that, he may not run that 4.5. He may not vert 40 inches. He may not broad jump 11. But he is a guy that just doesn't know how to give up on a play. And that wears down.
Right. And I think you need one or the other, right? You either have to be, or both. Some guys have both. Either you need to be the freak athlete whose first step off the ball is so fast that these tackles can't give up, or you're so strong you can just push these tackles back, or you just have the relentlessness that, hey, I don't care if you beat me on the first rep, I'm going to get by you on the second one, and I'm going to get to the quarterback. Another guy who could be there in round 2 if the Titans elect to go edge is his teammate, JT. I'm going to do my best here. Tui Omalalau.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Good.
We're going to do our best there.
Hey, listen, your guess is going to be my attempt.
Tui Omalalau, something like that.
I just say JT.
JT from Ohio State.
Yeah, 44. Look, I'm glad you mentioned him because like right now is like the pitching the prospects. Hey man, I want you to come on talking with TD, and so I had to send one of the agents a episode of last year, and so I listened to the Joe Alt one and sent that, and he said, man, that was one of the best guys that I faced, and I definitely agree with him. JT is a guy that's been and he's made it through that prospect fatigue, right? Because he's been good for 2 years now. You know what I mean? And he's someone that if you could get a hold of him, and again, he didn't test off the charts. He's a football player.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. And we know those guys at Ohio State. Now, you never scout the helmet, but you do have an understanding that, okay, look, man, pass rushers that come out of Ohio State, they're typically going to be pretty well polished and ready to go. And he's another one of them. Yeah,
I mean, you're right. You don't scout the helmet because as much as like LSU is wide receiver Grayson McMath hasn't turned out to be
Terrace Marshall.
Right. Like there are guys who come out of LSU who aren't that great, but Ohio State, their pass rushers typically are very good.
Yeah.
Quickly on the linebackers, Cody Barton brought in from Denver, a guy who's had 100 tackle seasons each of the last 3 years with 3 different teams.
He's averaged 121 tackles a game. He bucked 36 recently,
But you send away Kenneth Murray. I was saying this earlier. It kind of feels like you got Cody Barton as your 3-down linebacker. He's the green dot guy.
Yeah.
And then you've got 4 or 5 young linebackers, and you kind of hope that 1 or 2 of them can end up being productive players for you.
Yeah. I like all 3 of those guys, man. And, we'll see what happens with Chance Campbell. You know what I mean? If he can stay healthy, et cetera. But, I mean, James Williams, that's another one where it's like, you don't know how to quit, son. Like, you don't, but it's a good thing.
Right.
You know
he's just learning to be a linebacker.
Just learning how to play the position. I tell you, he and Kenneth Murray were really close. And Kenneth Murray helped him along a lot. Then you got Cedric Gray, and they kind of just threw Cedric Gray in there. He's green dot. With the third group, and you could tell like that dude was like a salmon swimming upstream. You know what I mean? It's a struggle. Then he got hurt, and it just never. But one thing he did throughout the year was he just kept plugging away, right? And he stayed involved. He finally got a chance. He and James Williams, they made some good plays. Now, were there some things that needed to be cleaned up? Absolutely. Were there some getting caught out of gaps, in the wrong gaps that led to long runs? Oh, yeah, for sure. You know what I mean? But you look at that, and then you look at Otis Reese, the 4. That dude right there converted from safety, at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Converted to linebacker here. But that dude, you talk about getting to the football, sideline to sideline, he gonna find that ball.
Yes, he is. And I think we've seen flashes from all of them, especially in like preseason. Otis Reese made a lot of plays. He makes a lot of plays on special teams.
Yeah.
Chance Campbell obviously was the darling of preseason this year, and then he got hurt. And then the 2 rookies from last year, Gray and Williams, I don't hate the room there.
No.
Like, yes, do you feel confident that you're going to have 2 starting level linebackers there this year? I don't know if I feel confident, but you kind of hope when you have 4 talented young guys in that room with a veteran like Cody Barton that it's going to work itself out, and you're going to find yourself with good linebacker play out there.
And you got Frank Bush, man. Like, that's a true OG right there. Frank Bush, the coach, the linebacker coach. He's been involved with the league for quite some time, so I think that only helps as well.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to chime in, you can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Don't forget, it's St. Patrick's Day weekend, and we are celebrating in East Nashville. Come out and join 1025 The Game in 5 Points at Boston Commons tomorrow. Adam Vingan will be out there for the official Nashville St. Patrick's Day Parade presented by Aer Lingus. Kicking off at 10 a.m. tomorrow, live Irish music, drink specials, and family fun all day long. And 1025 The Game will be on site from 9 to 11 with swag to give away, and sign up for a chance to win concert tickets. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. We'll wrap up the hour talking punter. Johnny Hecker coming in. Ryan Stonehouse is out. We will talk about that on the other side. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are having fun out here at the pub in the Gulch, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, bringing you coverage of the SEC tournament just down the road at Bridgestone Arena. Right now, quarterfinal number 2 of the day, Tennessee and Texas wrapping up at the under 4 timeout. Tennessee looks like they will hold on and end the Longhorns' run here in Nashville, Tennessee, setting up a big game against Auburn. Right now, the Vols up 10. If Tennessee beats Auburn tomorrow, outside shot, they end up as the number 1 seed. It'll depend on what happens on the other side of the bracket with Florida and Alabama. The Gators taking on Missouri in a little over an hour over at Bridgestone. And in the late game tonight, Alabama and Kentucky, after the Wildcats got a game winner at the buzzer late last night over at Bridgestone Arena.
We got some Wildcat fans in the house.
We do. We have some Kentucky fans pre-gaming, getting ready for the matchup with the Crimson Tide. That game might end like 120 to 118. Those two teams can shoot the leather off the ball.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully it starts earlier than 9:45, like last night's game. Hopefully it starts on time over there at Bridgestone Arena. Looks like things are moving at a faster pace today here on quarterfinal Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, talking Titans. We talked offense. We talked defense. And before we get into special teams, let's go to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matt wants to chime in on a possible edge rusher that the Titans could bring in. Matt, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. You got another Kentucky fan on the line here. Who is running on fumes today after that late game last night. But edge rusher that I've got in mind that I think would be perfect for the Titans fills a lot of the needs as far as being reliable, being healthy. That's been a definite trend that we've seen so far in free agency. They're going after guys that are available. Darius Smith. He's played all 17 games last year. Hadn't missed a game since a significant injury in 2021, I believe. Would provide some great leadership, kind of fill Harold Landry's role. And then I think we've got a real good opportunity with the draft shaping up how it is. Edge and wide receiver are very deep in rounds 2 and 3. There's tons of guys that are going to be available. So I think the draft is shaping up to sign a vet and then draft a young guy to develop behind Big Z. So curious what you think about that, TD. I'll hang up and listen.
I love the mention of Zadarius Smith.
Yeah,
now,
that's a good mention there.
Here's the thing. Z, I was in Baltimore in 2015 when they drafted him. And he was one of the first guys that I had on the prospect series. He was a 4th-round pick out of Kentucky, and I remember everybody was on Bud Dupree, who has had a solid career.
Yeah.
But Z Smith has actually had a better career, frankly. And, to be able to bring a guy like that in, and here's the deal, right? Even though he's like 75, like I say it jokingly, but, even though he's older, he still brings a presence coming off the edge.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's been looking at this, 4 years since he's had a 10-sack season, but he still is a Southern player that will get after the quarterback and be a guy that maybe every once in a while he could turn back the clock and get that edge rush that you need, but be a veteran, as the caller mentioned, for whoever you draft, whether it's Landon Jackson or, Jack Sawyer or one of those guys.
Right, yeah, it's Darius Smith, and I think it would kind of fit opposite Draymond Jones, too, because Smith's more of a speed rusher kind of guy, the bend on the outside, where Draymond Jones is the bigger guy, the Danico Autry kind of role. So that is a good player to bring up. Him and I know you mentioned Azeez Ojulari. I think those are probably the two out there that could end up being starting level players on the market right now.
You put Z Smith on there. I'm just like in a daze right now thinking about that. Like, you got some bullies up front, man.
Yeah,
like because Z Smith, he got some violent hands, man. You put that with and Draymond Jones is no. If you haven't gotten to watch that dude. Like these are guys. You put that with Simmons and Sweat. I mean, you got some guys up front that could really get after it.
Yeah, Titans looking solid on the defensive line. See what they add at edge, as that continues to be a position of need as we head into week 2 of free agency. I wanted to check in on punter quickly because I think it was a shock for a lot of people this week, including myself initially, when Ryan Stonehouse, when it came out that they were not bringing him back.
Right.
And Johnny Hecker coming in. Hecker is a veteran and obviously played for Bones Fossil when he was with the Rams. 4-time All-Pro. I like the Hecker signing. I think initially it did surprise me that they were getting rid of Stonehouse. But thinking about it, it does make sense considering that Stonehouse, as much as having a big leg is important for being a punter, you want a guy who can boot it far. When you outkick your coverage pretty much every time and the hang time isn't great, it's going to be a problem for the rest of special teams. And I think Bones Fossil probably came in and said, hey, I can't work with that with my punting unit if he's not going to get better at hang time and being a directional punter.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there is that directional side of it and the hang time where there were issues. But, I mean, I think it's one of those things we got to look at the full picture.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that that's what they did. They still came to that conclusion. Look, Johnny Hecker is a veteran punter. He's a guy that Fossil is already familiar with. And typically this is what happens with coaches. They have their guys, right? And, you know, those are the ones that they rely on. They're the ones that they want to bring to a new organization with them. I think Ryan Stonehouse did a solid job, all things being considered. Remember, this man had not his punting leg, but his plant leg snapped. You know what I mean? And this was the second time that he got a punt block in that game. Then let's also look at this year, this past year.
Week 1.
You know, week 1, what happened. And then just what continued to happen throughout the year. Yeah, it's going to impact you a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think those are all things you have to consider. But bringing Hecker in, that gives you a veteran, you know it's going to be reliable.
Yes, I think Ryan Stonehouse is – there's talent there, of course.
Yeah.
But the intricacies of playing punter, I think, lacked a little bit with that. So they bring in Johnny Hecker, veteran guy, familiar with Bones Fossil. And we'll see if that ends up being an upgrade.
They still don't have a kicker, though, right? No Nick Folk yet?
I was about to go there. What do you think the Titans are going to do at kicker? I saw the rumors of not rumors, but the joke that Brandon Aubrey was like, hey, Bones Fossil's going to get them to trade for me or something like that. Don't think that's realistic, but where do you think the Titans go kicking-wise?
I don't know. I didn't even think about that.
Right. Like, do you go young? Like, do you try and find a guy in the draft, not in the draft, but like a rookie coming out, which is always risky. Even the quote-unquote surefire kickers who come out, like Roberto Aguayo and Rodrigo Blankenship, who were supposed to be like those guys were supposed to be top of the market kickers when it came to young guys coming out, and both of them flamed out within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, Aguayo, he caught the yips, man. Second round
pick on a kicker.
I mean, I get it. I mean, you look at just like what Justin Tucker brought to the Ravens, you know, not the best name to mention right now.
I almost said his name a second ago too.
But you look at what, and I'm not saying bring him in, but you look at what he brought to the Ravens, that degree of reliability. I got a name for you, Cade York. He
was in here.
He was here. He was a guy they wanted. I know Rand wanted to hold on to him on the practice squad. The Giants ended up scooping. I believe it was the Giants. Showed the Bengals as his most recent team. So that's a guy, but you know, he caught the yips a little bit too,
right?
In Cleveland, but I mean, I would look at bringing him. I would at least have him in camp.
Yeah, I mean, Cade York, it's a guy you have familiarity with, at least in the building, and the talent is there. Like, he was a 4th round pick out of LSU.
He was good out of LSU.
Like, I understand kicking it. Like, I'm blanking on the name of the Lions kicker who turned into one of the better kickers in the league this year, who was in the UFL or something like that.
Badgley?
No. Lions kicker. Jake Bates. Jake Bates, okay. Yes. So he was in the UFL with the Michigan team up there, and then comes in, and he was hitting like 65-yard field goals last year for the Lions. So you never know where you can find a kicker. I don't think the Titans are all that concerned about it, which is, you know, we're talking about kicker here in March. They may not be worried about kicker in that building. Maybe you bring in a veteran guy midway through the offseason and then or bring in a rookie after the draft and have them compete. You know, Mike Vrabel said when he went on one of the Barstool podcasts that kickers came here and forgot how to kick. Maybe that was Mike Vrabel's issue, and he'll have that going on in New England. But who knows? Maybe they do bring back Nick Folk, but I think the Titans will figure that out. The fact that they're not making any moves, I think they would have a plan there.
Yeah, they have somewhat of a plan. I don't know, man. An undrafted free agent.
Right.
I honestly, like, I would really be on the phone with Cade York's agent.
Yeah.
I would have him at very least in camp.
Yeah, and we'll see. Titans made a move at punter this week, bringing in Johnny Hecker to replace Ryan Stonehouse. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Wrapping up hour number 3 here on Stillman and Company. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport alongside you here from the pub in the Gulch. Final hour coming up. we're going to dive into quarterback a little bit. Cory Curtis told us earlier that his hot take of the week was that Will Levis can improve. What to do with Will Levis? That's the question we ask coming up next here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hours, Stillman and company on this Fireball Hot Take Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and company is brought to you by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, your bank for small business. We are live at the pub in the Gulch. Why wait for St. Patrick's Day? The party starts early at the Pub Nashville. Enjoy proper shenanigans all weekend long with Irish fare, drink specials, and live entertainment, including Irish step dancers, bagpipes, and more. Don't miss the fun. Been a fun show down here at the pub. We're keeping up with the SEC men's basketball tournament, which is on to quarterfinal Friday down at Bridgestone Arena. 2 games already in the books today. Auburn beating Ole Miss 62-57. Tennessee beats Texas 83-72, setting up a showdown between the Tigers and Vols tomorrow in the first semifinal. 2 games coming up later on in a little under an hour, Florida and Missouri, and then Alabama and Kentucky, the late game, scheduled for an 8:30 p.m. tip-off. We've been talking Titans all day with TD on the program here, and I thought Cory Curtis made a good point when you asked him for his Fireball hot take of the week, and he said, Will Levis can get better, because Will Levis, as much as he was not good this year, there's still flashes from him that show you, hey, he could be an NFL quarterback. Maybe not an NFL starting quarterback, but an NFL quarterback. Question is, what do you do with Will Levis now? You bring in Brandon Allen, and seems like for all intents and purposes that he's going to be the backup. Cam Ward's going to be the starter, likely not going to carry 3 quarterbacks. What do you do with Will Levis?
You know, I get on the phone with Jacksonville, and I talk to Liam Cohen. I'm like, hey, man, like, you want to get your lead singer back in the mix? He may not be the lead singer, but he could give you complimentary vocals, you know what I mean, and see what you could get there. Brandon Allen, and you know, I actually have a story coming out tomorrow about the signing of Brandon Allen, and I'll say this: you look at in that story, I mentioned how he's already seen the onboarding process.
Yep.
For a quarterback in Brian Callahan's scheme, because 2020 he signed with
Joe Burrow
with the with the Bengals. Joe Burrow was the rookie. Boom, boom. He's seen it. He speaks the language. He spent 3 years there. I think that's going to help whoever is the quarterback, if it's Levis, or, you know, if the more likely option is they draft Cam Ward.
Yep.
So I say all that to say they have their backup. I think Levis on that rookie deal, still being in the building, isn't bad. But I remember Levis when Mason Rudolph was named the starter. He didn't ruffle any feathers or anything like that, but you could tell he was bothered, as he should be. Any competitor that loses their job is going to be bothered. But I just will wonder how it would be this go round. And Cam, I'm trying to think of how to put like Cam isn't somebody to be playing with. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious how that relationship would be. You know, when you got 2 dogs, because Levis is a dog. Don't get it twisted. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
He's a dog. So I just wonder how it would be having these 2 guys in that building, knowing that they're both going after the same thing, like how that would be.
Yes, and I know it's kind of a different comparison because in this example, he was a first-round pick the year before, but Josh Rosen was traded the day after the Cardinals took Kyler Murray first overall, and I understand it's different. Josh Rosen was a top 10 pick 365 days earlier, so a little different, but it does make sense to not have the previous franchise quarterback, quote unquote, that you thought was going to be your guy in the room when you bring in the next one.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Here's I was looking at the draft value chart and trying to see what might make sense if Will Levis was to be traded. And I think Jacksonville is the easy answer, right? Because it's his college offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who, when he had his most success, it was with Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator. So how does this trade sound for you? Titans trade their 5th round pick at 141 for the Jaguars' 4th round pick at 126. So you move up 15 spots from the 5th to the 4th. That is a value of 10.5 on this trade chart, which would be equivalent to the 201st pick in the draft, a 6th round pick. Think that's enough value for Will Levis if you're getting the equivalent of a 6th round pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's enough value. obviously you would angle for more, but I mean that fills into your obligation to get, a bunch of to pick 36 guys in the next, 3 years. Before I deal Levis, I have to consider, all right, Brandon Allen, he'll be 33 in September. Do you think that you could get another couple? Like,
it's a good point. Do you think, like, hey, if Will Levis takes one step back and you keep him on the roster, he can be your emergency third quarterback the whole year and just develops behind the scenes? Maybe he doesn't have to just be a backup. He could be your backup behind Cam Ward.
Right. And then you turn around and you see, can you trade him in the beginning of the offseason
for a little bit more,
or even hold on to him in training camp? Like,
yeah.
Let me tell you something, Jake. I saw 2016 where, Sam Bradford was the quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater had that injury, and next thing you know, there's a first-round pick landing right in Howie Roseman's lap. Now, I'm not saying it'll be a first-round pick for Will Levis, but, you can catch a team desperate, and boom, they give you a fourth.
That's a good point.
Right now,
maybe hold on to him, and if he can get some garbage time reps in preseason and show some flashes, you get a desperate team out there, might give you a little bit more. Initially, I wanted to see if the Titans could move from the 4th to the 3rd, because the Titans have the top pick in the 4th round. They're at 103. I wanted to see if maybe they could get up to Jacksonville at 88. But in that scenario, that pick swap would be worth a middle to high 4th round pick. You're not getting anything close to that for Will Levis. Yeah. But you're right. Maybe if he hangs around, show some flashes in the preseason, you get a desperate team that wants to come get him. Who knows? But I think more than likely before the season starts, Will Levis will be traded somewhere. Could it happen before the draft, during the draft? Sure. I think you're right that it probably is more likely that Will Levis is here through training camp, and then you either find a suitor who wants to take a chance on him for a 6th or 7th, or you trade him, you cut him, and I'm sure he'll end up on somebody's practice squad.
I'll be surprised if Levis is here before the start of next season.
Right, week 1.
No, I'm talking about
2026.
2026.
Gotcha.
I could see, I could put it together keeping him this year. But before the start, I would be surprised if he's there. And that's not saying I want to see him go, because I think Levis, there's value to him. And I think he can, in the right situation. I would love to see him go to San Francisco, go to the Rams.
Yeah.
And just kind of, buffer there, being that incubator there. And then, because that's something I thought was interesting, Sam Darnold in his presser. He said that being with Brock Purdy and Shanahan, it helped unlock some of the things that he didn't really resort to before. Who knows if that happens to Levis? Because the physicalness is there.
Right.
If God created a quarterback, it'd be Will Levis.
The arm talent
but he
is
just didn't
undeniable.
Put the mental part of it in.
Yes, and we've seen it plenty of times. I know Will Levis not a first-round pick technically, but you trade up to the top of the 2nd to get him. He's basically a first-round pick.
Yeah.
We've seen these first-round pick quarterbacks who flame out in their first stop get second lives. Baker Mayfield. I mean, I wouldn't say he's the franchise quarterback in Tampa Bay, but he's a guy who got close to $100 million to play quarterback for the Buccaneers, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
It happens, and I wonder if maybe Will Levis, whether it's in Nashville or somewhere else, does sit in the quote-unquote incubator and is able to get another deal somewhere else where he can try and be a starting quarterback. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to chime in. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport out here at the pub in the Gulch as we cover the SEC tournament today. Make sure to keep it tuned here for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament all day, presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, thenewcumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. We'll take a quick break. We'll keep talking quarterbacks for the Titans on the other side. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, in for Jared today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared today, live from the pub in the Gulch. Ian Safar back at the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. TD, we were talking about the signing of Brandon Allen as the Titans' backup quarterback for this upcoming season. I had this written in the grid and changed it because I wrote up some of these topics yesterday before the Brandon Allen signing. I wanted to get your thoughts on Jameis Winston as a possible backup quarterback because I thought he would be perfect for Cam Ward as a guy who's been the number 1 overall pick and come in with immediate expectations. Yeah, he didn't live up to them. He had some struggles in Tampa Bay, but also had some really good years and games in Tampa Bay. Feels like that could have been a good guy to kind of walk Cam Ward through the process of becoming an NFL player.
No, 100%. I agree with you on that. And I was telling Jared off the air yesterday that I thought Winston would be an excellent option because of that, but also just from a culture perspective, right? He's someone that has experienced a similar upbringing and that got it out the mud. You know what I mean?
Right.
And understands just everything that goes into, look, like, you know, people don't want to put race into it, but I mean, look, there's just a different standard that's placed on a black quarterback, right? And so being a black quarterback and being the number 1 overall pick, Jameis Winston has been there and done that. And so being able to help him navigate the mental part of it that is involved is a really good thing. And I think, you know, you also pair into Warren Moon. Like, you know, a lot of people don't know, like Warren Moon, he still has struggles mentally because of the way everything worked out for him.
Yeah.
You know, as far as having to go play DB, or excuse me, being told that he was a DB and going to Canada to play quarterback. So there is something to that. And so I think like having a guy like Jameis in place to help him out, you know, would have been good. And my thing is this, you can't have enough good things to help a quarterback develop, you know, but at the same time, there's advantages in the Brandon Allen. Like, I see exactly what they're doing with Brandon Allen. You know what I mean? But Jameis, I think that's the direction they could have went also.
Yeah, I understand the Brandon Allen signing. I think Jared said it yesterday that he's when you have a number 1 overall pick at quarterback, there can't be any controversy. Like, you don't want Jameis Winston because Jameis Winston, not having personally watched him in training camp, but I'm sure there are times when Jameis Winston, that natural talent that he has, shows. And there could be some practices in the rookie season where you're like, man, why is Cam Ward starting? Jameis Winston's the better player. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that with Brandon Allen in year 1 at the very least. But I do think that Jameis could have helped Cam Ward with a lot of the off-the-field stuff of what he's going to deal with being the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jared from Spring Hill has asked a couple of times, and I think you're the perfect person to answer this, TD, because you have been on the Shedeur Sanders side of this, saying that you think he should be the pick. Jared asked, why Ward over Sanders? Potential, Sanders has better fundamentals, IQ, and accuracy, yet Ward prevails. Is it just his potential? Still think if you hit on Sanders, that's a higher ceiling than Ward. Sanders brings more to the table to me. So, TD, as somebody who prefers Sanders over Ward, why do you think the Titans are taking Cam Ward at number 1 over Shedeur Sanders?
Well, I think it's because they feel that there's more ability. There's a higher ceiling with him. I think, you know, I asked Callahan about the potential versus the, hey, this guy can contribute now. And he hinted at, hey, you know, you don't pass up on a player that has a lot of potential just because you feel another one can come in now and be helpful. You want to always look at how good that guy could be over a 10 year. Because when you draft the guy number 1, especially, you want him to be good for 10 years and beyond. And that's not to say they believe Shedeur can't, but it's just so much of a high ceiling with Cam Ward. Whereas it's almost like if you look at Shedeur, you know, you're like, okay, I gotta, you know, really build around him. Like, I don't know for sure that he's the guy that will take and make everybody else better.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I think will exist within the system and thrive within the system and the weapons. Whereas you look at Cam and it's like, you know, this dude is a one-man wrecking show.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it's going to be your own show that he wrecks, but he could go about trying to resurrect it too. So it's a double-sided sword. I think they're looking at that potential that Ward has more.
Yeah, I think you're right that Sanders would probably be the safer pick.
Right.
But when you're picking a quarterback in the first round, there really isn't a safe pick. Like we've seen no doubt guys end up flaming out of the league too. So it's always kind of throwing darts when you're picking a quarterback early. I think it makes sense to take the guy that you feel like has the higher ceiling because all first-round quarterbacks kind of have the same floor of they're not your franchise guy.
Mm-hmm.
And as Shedeur Sanders maybe has a higher chance to stick around longer, he doesn't have that higher ceiling. I want to nip this idea in the bud quickly. Mark in Paris on our text line asking about whether the Titans take a quarterback in the second round. Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
from Louisville.
I wouldn't do that. I mean, he played in college 7 years and he got 1 year of good film.
I mean,
come on.
The Titans have already done this.
Yeah.
They took the flyer on Malik Willis. They took the flyer on Will Levis. At some point, you got to dive in. You can't keep dipping your toe in the water and be like, maybe this guy can be our franchise quarterback. You got to take a big swing.
And honestly, I think somebody trades into the back 10 picks in the draft in the first round and drafts Jackson Dart.
No,
I think he's I think there's going to be 3 quarterbacks.
I agree with that. I think it's pretty clear that we're going to see 3 in the first round. Do you think Sanders goes 2? Is that kind of you think the Browns go with that?
Yeah, I think they do.
Because there's been the rumblings lately that the Browns and Giants both really wanted Ward. But again, it is lying season, so you just never know. That could be the Giants trying to say that to get him to fall or whatever it is.
And here's the thing. Actions normally speak louder than words. And I remember at Shrine seeing Brian Daboll literally wherever Shedeur went, Daboll went during practice. And I remember seeing him grab Shedeur and they ducked into a side room and had a long conversation. He met with them also separately, at the Shrine. That does give you an indication that there's interest, but you know what? Same thing happened with the Steelers and Malik Willis.
Right.
At the Senior Bowl, and they turn around and they
took Kenny Pickett.
So it's a tough one to kind of put a finger on. Thank you. And I think when you look at just the way this thing sets up, if you're going to go a quarterback outside of the first round, I'm looking at Kyle McCord,
Will Howard.
Will Howard. Like, oh my God, though, at the darn combine, he was terrible. I don't know what was. I think it was just he wasn't used to like throwing to those guys.
Yeah.
And then to his credit, like every time he touched the football, they booed. And that's one of the things I don't like about the fans at the combine. Let that man do the biggest interview of his life without you and your nonsense booing. But nevertheless, I mean, you get where I'm going. A quarterback later, I'm not saying he would become a Kirk Cousins, but I mean, like, look at how Washington doubled up. You know what I mean?
You take a quarterback outside of the first round when you don't have a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Like Jalen Hurts got drafted by the Eagles when they already had Carson Wentz and thought Carson Wentz was going to be their guy. You take a quarterback. The Titans took Levis and Willis when they already had Ryan Tannehill in the fold. Like, you don't take a quarterback in the second or third round and expect them to immediately be your starter because there's a reason that they fell to the second or third round. So Titans are going to take Cam Ward. I need everybody listening to just take a second and lock that in. Like, it's going to happen. He is going to be the first overall pick. You don't have to love it. I'm saying I think it's a good decision, but you don't have to love it, but it's what's going to happen. As everything that has happened over the last couple of weeks has pointed to. So Cam Ward's going to be the quarterback. Brandon Allen's going to be the backup. I think, as we just talked about in the last segment, the biggest question mark in the Titans quarterback room is what Will Levis is going to be.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it because I'm really curious. What is it that Caleb Williams does better than Cam Ward?
I was thinking that exact same thing on the way over here.
I can't point to anything. Now, we talk about Jaden Daniels, that's just different. But seriously, what is it that Caleb Williams, and that's not to knock Caleb Williams, you know what I mean? But it's also to say I feel that Cam Ward is better, and my man's turn around look like, are you crazy? No, but I feel that Cam Ward is better than Bo Nix. I feel he's better than Michael Penix. So I'm really curious, like, what is it that Caleb Williams does better than Cam Ward?
It's all about what people are told. People were told last year that Caleb Williams was a generational quarterback coming out, so that's how he's going to be viewed. This year, people are saying that this is the worst quarterback class since 2022. Yeah, with Pickett and Willis, and so everybody's expecting everybody to be a bust. But these are different players, and I agree. If you watch Caleb Williams and Cam Ward, if you just put the film from their last year in college next to each other, I don't think it's night and day. Maybe you give Williams the edge, but I don't think that Cam Ward is this guy who in another draft class would go in the second round. He is a first-round pick at quarterback. Yeah, maybe he's going to go first overall because there's no – like last year. I think he does go slightly behind Williams, Daniels, and May if he came out.
Yeah, I think he's right in that mix.
But I think he would still have been a top 5 pick.
I could see that. I mean, look.
I think the Giants would have traded up and taken him at 4. If
the guy, in my opinion, has everything you want. And, you know, outside the last perfect quarterback prospect is probably Andrew Luck.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because, I mean, Joe Burrow, you have questions about the arm strength.
Trevor Lawrence was probably considered in that.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is another one. But I think, you know, for the most part, all prospects are going to have some type of warp that you got to smooth out. You know what I mean? And Cam has that. But the fact of the matter is like plutonium level potential.
Right. Like, I agree with saying this class overall for quarterbacks probably isn't one of the best. It is not deep. There are not 4 starting six starting quarterbacks like we saw last year. We saw 6 in the first 12. There isn't that. But Cam Ward is the clear number 1. And then I think you've got Sanders and Dart are both first-round picks behind him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, you look at – there's 3 first-round quarterbacks in this draft. 2 of those guys I will put in the mix with the ones that came out last year. But I think, again, Dart, because of the potential that he has, the big arm that he has, he's going to be in the first round. And that's fine, a team – and that's good for him. Like, if I'm Jackson Dart, I'm okay with going anywhere from 20 to 32 because that means this is a team that has some things in place and I'll be able to, you know, develop quicker and you know, be able to have, you know, a better supporting cast. So it's good. But I just feel like so often people allow the outside to influence.
Right.
Like, just watch it. Watch it for yourself. Watch it with no filter. You know what I mean? And no influence of a Daniel Jeremiah or, you know, a Dane Brugler telling you that these guys are this, that. Just watch it.
Right.
And it's okay to have a differing opinion from those guys.
Right. And again, the Mahomes comparison gets made too often. Nobody's Patrick Mahomes, but like Patrick Mahomes was not considered a generational quarterback.
Yeah.
And look at what he is, a generational quarterback. So these draft gurus are not always right. And you're right. Turn on the film. When I turned on the film and tried to watch Sanders and Ward right when the Titans got the first overall pick, I expected to like Shador better. I liked Cam better.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how it has to go. You've got to actually watch it and not just take what everybody says at face value and say, okay, bad quarterback class. That means Cam Ward shouldn't go number 1.
And the crazy thing is, although Shador is my favorite quarterback in this class, as I watched those guys together, and this is before the Titans were like, hey, you know, it became pretty clear that he was a guy. I kept coming back to, man, I could just, what if this stuff starts showing up on Sunday? Like, that would be tremendous. You know what I mean? But then you go back and you look at Shador and you're like, this stuff is going to show up. You're going to see him do this at the next level. So it's just that playing that balance is tough.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you would like to weigh in, you can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Big news in the NFL right now. Cooper Kupp has agreed to go back to Washington. He is going to be a Seattle Seahawk.
Makes sense.
We will talk about that and what the Titans might do in terms of a veteran wide receiver coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final half hour of the show on this Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. We've been at the Gulch here at the pub all day long.
Yeah.
Busy streets as it is St. Patrick's Day weekend. We got the SEC basketball tournament in town, game 3 of the day, about to tip off in about 30 minutes over there at Bridgestone Arena as Missouri takes on the 3 seed Florida in the first of 2 late games tonight. We'll see Kentucky and Alabama in the late game coming up about an 8:30 Central Time tip over there at Bridgestone. Also have Preds coming up tonight. They're on the West Coast taking on the Anaheim Ducks. Pre-game coverage at 8, puck drop at 9. We'll talk a little Preds in the final segment, but did just get some big news in the NFL world. Cooper Kupp not wasting any time in his free agency. He was released on Wednesday. And on Friday, he moves in the division back to the Pacific Northwest, where he played his college ball, to sign with the Seattle Seahawks. Ian Rappaport reporting over $15 million a year for Cooper Kupp. Thoughts, TD, on Kupp staying in the NFC West and becoming the new, number 2 target for Sam Darnold up there in Seattle?
Yeah, I like the match. And I think it's really good for Sam Darnold because you get another guy like he and Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kupp and Jigba. These are guys that you know they're going to be where they need to be, when they need to be, and you also know that they're going to catch the football. Like Cooper Kupp, like let's not forget,
he does not drop the football.
This was a Triple Crown winner.
Maybe one of the best wide receiver seasons early ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year Jamar Chase, the best receiver in the league, has an argument for that,
right.
But it was a solid season. So I think when you look at these guys together, it's really good. You know what I mean? And I think Darnold is in a good situation. I'm sure, Stillman is somewhere happy that his guy, got a weapon. But, I mean, they still need to go out and get another guy. Like, they need that X receiver. I'm not familiar with their depth chart, but I can't think of any, big X vertical type of guy. So that is something that they could address. But, I mean, I like the move for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's see. What is – Seattle had
Jake Bobo was the other guy, pretty much.
Jake Bobo, he's a young guy, and they did sign Marquez Valdez-Scantling too from New Orleans, who he was a good deep ball threat.
Look, they're serviceable. I think they do need somebody though. I think they'll need to address that. Like that's a place where a Keenan Allen would be good for them. That's a place where someone along those lines would help. It's a team that, they're not super young. They're not old. So they're right there. The NFC West is very winnable right now. So, you could get a veteran and that could be right on schedule with things for the program.
For the Titans, I don't know if they were ever involved on Cooper Kupp at all.
I don't believe so.
But do you see them maybe dipping back into the veteran receiver market? I know you mentioned Elijah Moore as maybe a younger option out there, but you've still got established guys who are probably on the back end of their career, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, who maybe could be a good veteran presence for a young quarterback out there. And obviously not going to be your deep threat like a Calvin Ridley, but can kind of be a DeAndre Hopkins out there, a reliable possession receiver.
Yeah, I think it's best for them to go ahead and draft.
Draft one?
Go get Dante Thornton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've said the name multiple times. Go get him. I mean, Jaden Higgins is someone that could be of interest. I would like to see more of and this is why I love the combine, right? Because so he was there. He ran the 4.4, high 4.4. He had a 40-inch or 39 vertical. It was like a 10-9 broad jump. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I don't remember seeing this explosiveness on the Iowa State team. Let me go back and watch it again. You know what I mean? And I went back and watched it again. And I said, yeah, my eyes didn't deceive me. That testing is good, but it didn't show up there on film. I still think he's a guy that could contribute. So, that's someone that you could go get. I think you look, I mean, there's a good amount of like those bigger guys on the ball type of receivers that you could get even on day 3. So I would definitely look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice for the Titans this year where you look and the 2 big areas of need are wide receiver and edge, and those are 2 very deep groups in this class where you feel good. If you're drafting somebody on day 3, you're never expecting them to be a starter, but you could get a guy who you feel good about the upside of or can end up being a productive receiver in that room later on in the draft. William from Antioch on our text line says, it took me 7 minutes and 35 seconds to watch Cam Ward and be sold on him. His playmaking skills on the field are similar to a point guard on the hardwood. We got to get him tighten up. There we go. Me spreading my Cam Ward propaganda today on the air has gained another member of the psych ward.
Hey, listen.
We love it.
You better talk yourself into it if you're a Titans fan,
right,
because it's happening.
If you haven't talked yourself into it yet, you've got, let's see, the draft is 41 days away. You got 41 days to talk yourself into it before Cam Ward walks across that stage, gives a handshake to Roger Goodell, and holds up a number 1 jersey. If he's actually going to the draft, I don't know. But maybe you'll see him on the ESPN feeds. 615-737-1025. Last call for phone calls here on this Fireball Hot Take Friday. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today, live from the pub in the Gulch. It is Preds game day. Predators are on the road on this West Coast trip as the SEC basketball tournament going on inside Bridgestone Arena this week, taking on the Anaheim Ducks tonight, looking for a 5th straight win. We'll talk some Preds on the other side and wrap up the show here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's hockey night in Smashville.
Walk over to Yossi. His one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, now on Stillman and Company.
Predators Game Day is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Predators are on the West Coast this week. They're taking on the Anaheim Ducks tonight. Pre-game at 8 with Max Hers. 9 o'clock puck drop with Pete Weber and Hal Gill. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today, wrapping up the show here on this Friday. TD, you been keeping up with the Preds at all? They won 4 straight.
Yeah, I kept up. I've been keeping up somewhere. I was at the game last week. Dang, I forget who they were playing. Last Thursday, I was at the game.
Yeah.
And, man, it got close at the end, but, they just kept getting goal after goal. Look, they traded away 4 players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you look at the 4 and the 3 moves that they made. What has happened since then is pretty interesting. And one of the things, like, you always look at with trades is just, like, how it opens the door for a younger player.
Yep.
Right? And is it Svechkov?
Svechkov, yeah.
Svechkov. 21 years old.
Yeah.
You look a couple days ago, he had the power play assist. He's starting to emerge, and that's one of the things that Barry Trotz has said, like, hey, yeah, you get rid of, a valuable player, but it opens up an opportunity for another guy to elevate. So I think, Trotz was right with that. And I want to watch, how he continues to develop.
Right. And I know there are people out there saying, like, stop winning now. Like, if you wanted to win, do it earlier in the season when you had a chance to get into the playoffs. Now getting themselves further away from possibly having the top lottery odds for the number 1 overall pick. But good to see them winning, especially with the core that they've got in there and the number of veterans with winning experience. You want to see them come together and look like a team, because this is a team that feels like its championship window is now. And yes, it's been a disappointing season, but if you can get this team playing good hockey down the stretch, that can translate over to next year when you try and run it back and see if you can go get yourself into a good position heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'll say this, man, like let's see. Yeah, I was it was a Spectrum back then, the Flyers, but I remember it being live then, but I mean, Bridgestone Arena, when the Preds are playing well, like, it's rocking.
Yeah.
I love, like, you get the power play, you got the DMX coming on, and then they score a goal.
Tim McGraw
come, and just like, I like it, I love it. And then at the end, it's like, like, I love that environment.
It's great. And it's so funny because people who don't live in Nashville, aren't from Nashville, would not expect how big of a hockey town Nashville is.
Nashville is a hockey town. Hockey first here,
right.
Especially right now with the Titans the way that they are.
I mean, the Titans, when the Titans are good, people rally around the Titans, for sure. That's how it is with every NFL team. But, man, do the people around here love their hockey when they're good.
They love it.
I mean, last year, those playoff games, I wasn't actually in the building for any of them, but just watching on TV, like, when they get good hockey, the city of Nashville rallies, and I'm excited to see, hopefully next year, they get a winning product on the ice again.
Before I came here, so I want to say, 2017, 2018, the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, it was 17.
17?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing them broadcast the game over there, by the Hall of Fame.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's what I'm talking about.
When they brought out Marcus Mariota and the Titans offensive line, I think that was either the Stanley Cup run or it was the next year when they won the President's Trophy.
It was the next year with Mariota.
Right, yes. Lawan's chugging beer off a catfish, and Quentin Spain's got his shirt off. Like, the city rallies around that hockey team. So
absolutely. Obviously,
things didn't go the way they hoped this year, but the hope is that a good finish to this year can transition them into a solid 2025-26 season. Getting the numbers back on the Cooper Cup deal, 3 years, $45 million. Little steep. When I was talking with Adam the other day, his spot track value, which always is a little lower, said 11. It said like 2 for 22.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have liked if the Titans did it I don't think they were in, but if they got offered him 2 years, $30 million, I think I would have done it. A third year for Cooper Kupp, who's kind of like, you've seen the downward trajectory.
Yeah.
I don't know if 3 years would have been great for me.
No, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done the deal at all. Honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
I thought, he makes sense as a safety blanket, and that was kind of what I was thinking. But then I did see, I forget who tweeted it out. It was his ability to get open numbers. And he was like, his Triple Crown year, he was like 18th or 19th in the NFL, and he was like 141st last year. So
just go ahead and get Restrepo. You know what I mean?
That is true. Go get a younger version. Yeah, he might not be Cooper Kupp, but you probably at this point in his career, you're going to get about the same numbers from a rookie in that role. Again, we are at the Pub in the Gulch. We are covering the SEC tournament all week long, I should say. Florida and Missouri coming up in about 10 minutes from Bridgestone, Alabama and Kentucky later on tonight. Selection Sunday on Sunday, notably. TD, are you a big March Madness guy?
I typically do like to watch it. I will say this year I have really, really lacked from that perspective. I can't tell you a single college game I've watched this year.
Yeah, and honestly, with me doing the women's games, I don't pay a ton of attention to the men. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a fun tournament on both sides this year. Like, I think there's a lot of parity on both sides. The SEC might get 14 teams out of their 16 into the tournament. And last year, they got 8 in and only 2 made the Sweet 16. So will the SEC show up in March Madness this year is a big question. They might have 3 1 seeds. They probably will have, or no, excuse me, probably only 2. Houston's going to get that third one. But you're probably going to have 2 1 seeds and 2 2 seeds. Can you get maybe 6 teams to the Sweet 16 this year?
I guess we'll see.
It's going to be interesting.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I've watched more women's basketball overall than men's basketball. I'm talking about, including NBA.
Right.
The AU Athletes Unlimited was listen.
Unrivaled's great too.
Unrivaled is awesome.
Yeah,
I wish it was here because it has more star power.
Yeah.
But shout out to Nashville, our city itself. Like, we broke records for attendance.
Yeah,
for
and they're coming back next year.
They're coming back. And here's the thing: shame on the WNBA for giving Cleveland, Ohio.
I know.
A team over Nashville.
Nashville made so much sense.
Eventually, it's going to happen. But as you see, you put a sports team here, it's going to get supported.
And rally around Vandy. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament next week. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Been a fun show. We're signing off live from the Pub in the Gulch. ESPN Radio coming up next. Preds pregame starts at 8 p.m. right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.